Hey, what's up? It's cute what if? This side. Today we will be seeing what if Inventor Deku fell for May. Now before we move ahead with the FIC, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. Class 1H of UA wasn't like the other classes where being able to fight was a prerequisite. Rather, instead the class was designed for students that had useful quirks that weren't exactly combat related. A few examples being herself with her zoom quirk that lets her see really far away. A boring quirk that would be of little to no use in being a hero, not that she wanted to be on the front lines. Her goal was purer than that. Make lots of babies, sell them to lots of people and make lots of money. Another example was that chatty girl next to her, Sakura Shizenji, the granddaughter of Recovery Girl, had a quirk that May would have loved to have herself. Tireless. Simply put, her fellow pink-haired girl just didn't need to rest. Something the girl was planning to use as a doctor. Which was boring. If May had that quirk, she'd be able to spend an extra 8 hours inventing. There were other quirks, but that one was the only one May actually remembered because it was a lot more useful than anything else in the room. Well, almost. Still, the lack of cool quirks made the people in the room kind of unimpressive, even if you did have to receive a recommendation to enter the class. She got hers by winning a contest and making high-density adjustable weights. So, is it true that you got a recommendation from All Might? Sakura slammed her hands onto the desk of the green-haired boy that sat one seat forward and to the right of her. He was a plain-looking boy with a lot of freckles and messy green hair. He also appeared to be completely amazed by everything. Oh, yes, that's right, he did. I did. What I mean to say is that All Might gave me my recommendation. I look forward to learning with you. Oh hey, you're that one boy I saw on TV the news a while ago. You took on that slime villain all on your own. And you didn't even use your quirk. Sato, Shun, Saitama, something that started with us, she didn't remember, but his quirk was kind of useful. He was a Wi-Fi hotspot, a good one too. He had on square glasses and looked like a textbook example of the cool nerd that was starting to show up. I saw it on YouTube. How did you know that the fire extinguisher would do that? I'm Sano, by the way. Sanoha? She would totally not remember that. Oh, I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's a pleasure to meet you. Izuku gave a deep bow despite sitting down so that his face nearly touched his desk. And, I just used what was around me. I noticed his body shrank when it came in contact with the smoke, so I figured it must require oxygen. I just got lucky. You went in there based on just a hunch? A cold voice came from behind them, Ihama, a tall long-haired man that always looked bored. She knew his name because she also really liked his quirk, and the fact that they went to the same middle school might have helped. Time dilation. It sounded a lot cooler than it was, while the official description was that he slowed down all time, only his mind and eyes were unaffected. Basically, he could read and think superface until he got a headache and a nosebleed. You must have had a lot of faith in your quirk to back you up. Oh, well, the thing is, poor kid, wasn't the same age as her? And taller? Was blushing up a storm. Every word came out like he was inventing a new form of music called stutter step. Sakura slammed her hands onto Izuku's desk, bouncing up with emotion. Oh come on you, he's in 1H. If he had an awesome quirk for fighting, he'd be in the hero classes, not the support classes. Come on Izuku, what's your quirk? Oh, I bet it's the understanding of chemicals or something like that. Izuku stopped his flinching and became still, his eyes glazed over as he stared forward. Actually, on paper, they say that my quirk is quirk analyses, but in reality, his voice was dry and barren. I don't actually have a quirk. Then you're either an idiot or brave, you said in his usual mature for his age voice that she had been listening to since middle school. You went into a deadly situation based off of a hunch. I know, Izuku stressed, his hands balled into fists under his desk. But I couldn't just stand by and let him hurt people. My body just kind of moved on its own. Hey, it's alright, Shoto no Soma? Sonar? Said with giving Izuku a peace sign. We get it, all of us are here because we want to help people but can't. The door opened and the pro-hero power loader clanged in his face, mostly obscured by his helmet. Alright new students, welcome to the support class. Please sit down so that we can get to work. I will be your homeroom teacher Higuri Maijima. Excuse me, Sensei? May raised her hand. She had had enough. It had been a whole hour since she had last tinkered with something, and her notebook was practically overflowing with ideas by this point. She was almost starting to care about the conversations going on around her. And that was scary. Yes, Ms. Higuri snapped one of his gloved fingers and pointed towards her. What's your name? May Hatsum. Soon nobody would be asking for her name, as it would be known by all the heroes. When will we be able to enter the workshop? I welcome your enthusiasm, but we will not be opening the workshop until tomorrow, and access will be limited to those that pass the safety test tomorrow. Higuri gave her a small nod and resumed writing on the board, despite his giant metal claws that served as his hands were surprisingly adept at writing on the board. Now then, normally I would be using PowerPoint, but for today we will be. May turned him out, focusing instead on her notebook. She had so many ideas, and she had to wait until tomorrow to even step foot inside the workshop. How was she going to live? It was on her collapse into the darkest despair she could imagine that May happened to glance once more at Izuku, his bag bursting with notebooks even as he scribbled like a madman into a fresh one. Quirkless, huh? XXXX. One of the worst-kept secrets about AU was their lunches. Or at least that's what May thought, given how the moment she walked into the room she was reminded that she was human and did, in fact, need to eat, something that she apparently hadn't done today. It smelled fantastic, and fortunately she had 2 hands, which meant she could eat and work on one of her babies. How can you eat this stuff? Sakura sat down across from her tray. Barons save for a salad. Her quirk also made her super efficient with her metabolism. Or something. May's own tray was half overflowing with just about everything they would give her. It's so unhealthy, and I'm fairly certain most of it was frozen this morning. It's her only meal for the day. You sat next to her like they were best friends or something. Wait, were they? Well, at any rate they were both 1H students now. Anything she doesn't use goes directly to her boobs or into her fat head. May looked down at her chest, then at the mountain of food she had acquired. Sure, let's go with that. Sakura sighed, turning to glare at you with her green eyes, and threatened both of them with the lettuce that hung off her fork. That's not how any of that works. How it works? Sakamoto asked, sitting next to them. Wait, that was too many syllables, wasn't it? She needed a nickname or something for him. Wi-Fi, 'cause his quirk was the only thing she remembered. It wasn't her fault he was completely unrememberable. And I heard something about boobs? May shrugged and turned back to her most recent project, a wrist-mounted grappling hook. It worked and had a lift of 200 pounds combined with a 50-foot reach. The device was a success if it wasn't for the fact that it tended to dislocate the arm of whoever it was attached to. Speed setting must be off. Or perhaps it would be best as a belt. Much harder to dislocate center mass. Should you really be using a screwdriver as a fork? Just be glad she's not using her hands. A tray fell to the ground with a clang, and the once buzzing room fell silent. Except for one violent-looking young man. Damn, that. What the hell are you even doing here, you quirkless loser? Didn't I tell you not to come here, you weakling? Kachin. I'm Izuku. Hey, she remembered his name. Tried to back away but was easily overpowered by the larger boy, being lifted by his shirt collar so that his feet were dangling in the air. I'm in the support class, Kachin. We shouldn't be fighting. Can it, you dweeb? Damn, Deku. Kachin shouted, one hand balled into a fist that was crackling with small explosions. It was none of her business really. Sure, Izuku was in her class, and she remembered his name, but that was as far as their relationship went. Classmates. And yet May found her body moving on its own. She slapped the wrist-mounted grappling hook onto Kachin. The snap-on design was designed to be easily attached when needed. What the hell, you crazy bitch? This isn't any of your damn business, he yelled. Apparently, she didn't like to be called a bitch, as her hand slipped and activated the grappling hook. In a moment it was attached to the roof, and Kachin was sent flying into the air. By some miracle, Kanakan's grip on Izuku slipped and her classmate only fell a foot, landing on his ass with an undignified thud, while the cafeteria had a violent new chandelier. Are you okay, Izuku? She knelt down to offer him a hand up, smiling at the way he looked at her, blushing. We're in the same class, I may. Gay girl, I'm Izuku. He shook his head back and forth like a puppy with a chew toy. With a breath he calmed down. Thank you, I'm Izuku, but Katsuki Bakugo? One of the teachers shouted, or a really old student, his eyes were red and unblinking. Izuku Midoriya, Mei Hatsune. Come with me. Her first day and she was already in trouble. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Even after they had explained themselves to the principal, both of them were given detention for the entire week. That meant no workshop hours. And it meant being bored. She was not good at being bored. It was stressful watching those hours tick by just doing absolutely nothing, thinking about all the things she could be doing. Why was she even being punished for doing something heroic? Why was Izuku here as the victim? At least Kacchan had been sent to a different room and was threatened with a suspension. But really she was so bored. She rested her head on her arms, taking up as much of the desk as she could. The pro-hero Eraserhead, the one that had got them in trouble, sat at a desk reading a book. Mei? Izuku half-whispered her direction. She looked at him and he jumped slightly, so she made a noise that was as happy as she could muster at that moment. Which was more or less a grunt. She hated being bored so much. Just wanted to thank you for helping me out. Izuku kept looking at her, then looking away from her. And to apologize for Kacchan, he's just kind of angry. Everything. We used to be friends and I kind of just wanted to say hi. It's all right, Izuku. She sat straight in her seat and let out a sigh that turned into a smile. Still, I got some good information on my baby. Your baby? Oh, you mean that wrist-mounted grappling hook? That thing was really impressive. Thanks. Hey, you want to see my blueprints? By luck or grace, they had both been allowed to their bags with them. And if their warden hadn't said anything about them talking so far, then it was probably okay to do something. Maybe. Still, more trouble beat more boredom. She pulled out a stack of her notebooks and quickly found the page where her wire arrow was located. See, that was just the prototype. Most of the time it dislocates the person's arm. She scooted the desk closer and looked towards Eraserhead, who was still buried in his book. Whoa, that's really impressive. You built it yourself? She was starting to like this boy. He pointed at the next page. And this? Have you made this? Oh, my hover saws? Sadly, I haven't had the resources to make those just yet, but I was planning on making them as soon as I got the design approved in the workshop. Right after a lot of other projects. You have good taste, Izuku. I have a feeling that they're going to be one of my best items. Well, it's not just that. Izuku pulled out one of his own notebooks titled Hero Analysis for the future number 14 and through the pages. I just thought that those boots would be very effective for Hantashiro. He's in Hero Class 1. His quirk allows him to shoot sticky tape out of his elbows. With these boots his mobility would increase dramatically, allowing him to even scale buildings. The only downside to his quirk is that it makes his skin dry out, so if we develop a system to counteract that, Mei asked, blinking at the notes and her blueprints. The gears in her head already turning. She had just thought about making generally useful tools at first, but making gears specifically for a hero. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. No. That's brilliant. She scrambled to another page. What about this? Do you know of any quirk that would benefit from this? Oh, I think there's a student that could use that. Here we are. This was a wonderful use of her time and the start of a beautiful partnership with Izuku. Are you sure it's safe? What? How should I know? We just built them. Izuku sighed, staring at the large moon boots he and Mei had built to her specifications. In theory, they worked. Each shoe had a lift potential of 100 pounds and enough forward moment to reach 40 miles per hour, and with a rechargeable battery life of 2 hours, the hover soles were beyond anything he had ever dreamed of making. The battery life was a bit of an issue. Perhaps a quirk that could generate an electrical field could. Izuku! Mei snapped her fingers in front of his face, her cross-haired eyes locked onto him, goggles resting on her forehead, and her pink hair was slick with sweat. His first friend in the academy also happened to be the first girl he talked to, which, given his middle school record, was more impressive than beating that sludge monster. What? He asked, hyper-aware of how close she was. There were several things that Izuku learned about Mei in detention. She set out each day to get 36 hours out of a 24-hour day. She had a one-track mind that worked at frightening speeds. And lastly, she didn't exactly know what personal boundaries were. She backed away, smiling. an electrical switch in her hand and more than her fair share of grease and oil smeared on her face. You were doing that thing again. I need you to focus. She used her quirk, eyes zooming in then back out on him. The motion made her slightly cross-eyed, so she shook her head. That thing being when he starts rambling about somebody's quirk. Oh, right. Sorry. He looked at the hoversaws once again just because it was easier than maintaining eye contact with May. With the power cables attached and several of the controls still linked to May's switchboard, he shouldn't have anything to fear. Okay, well, I'm ready. All right. She pointed towards the sky. Her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L, the first ever test run of the Hatsum Midoriya Industries, name still pending review, is ready to go in 3, 2. Izuku felt the hum in the air, and all eyes in the workshop were on them. Many of the other students in the workshop weren't even in the prototype phase, yet due to May's enthusiasm, they already had a nearly completed gadget. And he was her test dummy. 1. There was a beep. Then a pause. The 2 fans on the bottom started, kicking up the layer of dust that rested on the workshop floor. Already it felt like there was no traction and he could easily slide on the ground like it was a sheet of ice. He leaned to the right and started sliding in that direction, then left. Whoa! All right, phase 1 is a success. May bounced, her smile unmatched. She flipped another switch and the boots began to shake. Then another and the power and control cables were disconnected. Phase 2 is go. You have complete control, Izuku. Wait, what? Another thing he learned from May is that one way or another she was going to be the death of him. Propulsion fans on the back of his heel kicked in with the sound of a jet engine, and he shot forward like a scared rabbit. The other students wisely got out of his way as he did his best to prolong his inevitable crash. May. I wasn't ready. I believe in you, Izuku. May chased after him, but her voice grew distant the moment he burst through the workshop doors and out onto the pathway that separated the workshop from the park. It looks like he was going to be testing the Hover Soul's rough terrain ability. Other shouts followed from his classmates and Sensei. If Higura Sensei's safety and equipment lecture was anything to go by, there was a very good chance that if he got hurt that they'd be restricted from the workshop. Hopefully, the All Might's all-right workouts he'd been doing since meeting his hero was for more than just strength. How was he supposed to steer with these things? This was a major design flaw. And why did they start out with maximum thrust to begin with? Then it hit him, not anything specific really, just a tangled mess of branches and foliage as he came to a crashing stop that ended with him upside down and staring at the sky. He was alive. That was good. And it didn't feel like anything was too broken. Maybe just a bruise here and there, and a bit of damage to his ego. May came into his vision, panting and smiling at him. Sorry about that, Izuku. I got a little carried away. Are you okay? She began to pull off the hoversaws from his feet. Oh, my babies aren't too damaged either. I'll consider phase 2 a moderate success, but we still have a ways to go before they're market ready. I'm fine, May. Just next time please give me a bit of warning before you do that. But I think we need to work on the steering a bit. Once free from their project, he sat on the ground cross-legged. It needs a guideline or something at high speeds, maybe some other form of enhanced maneuverability. Wait, a guideline. Oh, I know. What if we use it in conjunction with your grappling hook? That's a good idea. By the time he had finished speaking, May was already at the door to the workshop, waving her arm. Completely unaware of their sensei blocking the way with his metallic frame. Come on, Izuku. We have a lot of work to do before Higuri-sensei closes the workshop again. Oh, excuse me, sensei, we have a lot of modifications to make. It was often difficult to tell what mood their sensei was in due to the large excavator bucket that served as his helmet. But if the crossed arms and tapping foot were any indication, he was not pleased. May Hatsum, Izuku Midoriya, need I remind you of the safety rules already? His voice was a low growl that rumbled like a landslide. What? No, we both aced that test. May gave him a thumbs up. Right, Izuku? We know all about the safety procedures for the lab. It was a quick sprint to stand next to the two. At least nothing hurt too bad. His arm might be sore tomorrow. I'm sorry, Sensei. It was all my fault. I was eager to test the invention and didn't think about the consequences. Just like you're not considering the consequences of lying to me over something so trivial. Higuri let out a breath that made him shrink. He reached out and grabbed one of the hover saws, examining them. Still, I must commend both your ingenuity and work ethic on this piece. To have a fully functional prototype this early in the year is unheard of. Especially given your quirks. Higuri presented the boot back to Izuku, a smile making itself known from under his helmet. Izuku, while it is commendable to protect your friends, we have rules and regulations for a reason. In the future, try to remind Mei of that. He laughed, scratching his chin. I need one of you to be the responsible one if you two want to keep teaming up. Something that Mei doesn't have the aptitude for? Yeah, that's great and all, Sensei. Mei all but shoved her way past their teacher. But me and Izuku have a lot of work to do if we want to get these babies ready by Friday. The assignment was to submit a design. And we'll submit a completed design. Mei shouted, already working at the boots with a screwdriver. A stream of incoherent words bubbled out from her. She was already back in her own world where nothing but the project in front of her mattered. Higuri gave a sigh. I knew that girl was going to be a handful when I read her profile. Don't worry, Sensei. Izuku gave a small bow and followed after Mei. Apparently, they weren't in any real trouble. Still, best not to push his luck. I'll do my best. Mei already had one boot completely taken apart by the time he got to her. They're sturdier than I thought they would be. She smiled at him and nudged him with her elbow. Just like you are. I thought you'd be a bit more hurt than that after the crash. Were you planning on me getting hurt? He placed the other boot on the countertop, removing some of the foliage that had gotten stuck in the bottom fans. Nope, when I saw you hovering there I just had to see them in action. And I might have gotten a bit carried away. She held up one of the fans, watching as it whirled and adjusting the speeds. I don't want my partner to get hurt. Next time I'll be the test dummy. No, it's fine, I don't mind it. You understand more of this stuff anyways, I'm just an extra pair of hands. Before he joined 1H, the only thing he had ever taken apart and put back together in any working order was a few pens and an All Might action figure. But now, following Mei's lead, he could build a hover boot. Besides, I'd rather be the one to get hurt than you. Mei snorted. You really do have the mindset of a hero, don't you? Yeah, growing up I wanted to be a hero just like All Might. And then you found out you were quirkless? Mei asked, still focused on the boot. She stretched a hand out towards him. Phillips. He handed her a screwdriver. Yeah, and I still wanted to be a hero just like him. But then, he bit his lip and tried to not hear the words All Might had said to him. How he could not be a hero, repeated again and again, and given a fake speech about how he could make a difference without being a hero that ended with his recommendation to U.A's support program. But then I met All Might. And he said I couldn't be a hero. He sounds like an asshole. Mei blew on a piece of circuitry, flipping her goggles down onto her head with a nod. Don't get me wrong, I like All Might as much as the next girl, but he shouldn't crush people's dreams like that. He just didn't want me to get myself killed trying to be a hero. His fists tightened at his sides, and that pit in his stomach when he heard those words again appeared, sapping the heat from his limbs. He wanted to be at home, curled up in his chair and do nothing. Before quirks, anybody could be a hero: firemen, policemen, doctors, teachers. Heroes came in all shapes and sizes, and that was without quirks. Besides, Mei flipped her goggles up and handed him one of the hover souls, a giant smile on her face. You don't need to be a hero to make a difference. Izuku looked at Mei, wide-eyed, acting like she hadn't just quoted All Might word for word. When she spoke those words, they did not have the hollow promise that All Might's had, like he was speaking to a child. No, they were filled with truth and hope. When she spoke, he did not merely accept them as truth. He believed her. There was an unspoken agreement between her and Higuri-sensei. She would pass all of his tests, and he would allow her to work on blueprints in class. It was the next best thing outside of being allowed to spend all of her time inside the workshop. Oh, maybe she could talk him into giving her a key to it if she promised to get an A on everything, not blow anything up, and get at least 8 hours of sleep. Okay, 6.5. Not inside of the building. Better idea. Get Izuku to get the key. That sounded like a much better idea, with much higher rate of success. Now all she had to do was find a way for Izuku to think it was a good idea. She smiled, taking just enough time to glance up at her green-haired friend scribbling furiously in his notebook. Well, one of his notebooks. Izuku's notes were the best in class. Well, she'd only seen his and she didn't take notes, so his were the best. They were structured with both the whatever Higuri-sensei was rambling on about and his own thoughts on the subject in these cute little annotations that had a chibi version of a pro-hero, often All Might. Yes, the co-founder of Midoriya Industries, name still pending. She should probably get a comedy on that, was the diligent one. Which was a good thing because she could trust him to keep her in one piece and out of any potential lawsuits. And Izuku got to have his name on all of her inventions. It was win-win. Science fair. Mei snapped out of her musings and focused on her sensei for the first time since he started scolding her this morning. Those were some of her favorite words, a chance to show off some of her babies. Takes place in 1 month. Winning teams will be allowed to go to the National Gadgets Fair to show off their studies and inventions. While participation isn't mandatory, I will offer extra credit to anyone who participates. And if we win? Mei shot out of her seat, slamming both hands onto her desk, grinning. Eyes zoomed in on her, the metal bucket her sensei called a helmet, trying to find any clue on what would be her prize. Hyaguri gave a sigh. Well, if you win, you get to have a week off, going to the National Gadgets Fair. I assume that would be enough motivation for you. Technically, it was more than enough motivation for her to devote the next month for a project. She'd do that anyways. However, I will reward those that manage to win an A on any test of their choosing. Outside of physical fitness. Great. She had so many ideas. Which one would be the most impressive? The auto stabilizer? Wire arrow? Oh, perhaps the electric booster that was still in the workshop? She should consult with Izuku. She looked towards her partner in crime and saw him looking her away as well. She gave him a thumbs up. One he returned in a heartbeat. She knew she could count on him. Additionally, for those that are competing, I will open up the workshop on Saturday. Mei gasped. Ever. XXXX. The moment the bell rang, Izuku was all hers. When they exited the classroom, she wrapped her arm around his shoulder. So, for the fair, I have a bunch of different ideas and I can't decide which one I should build. She'd figure it out eventually. But as her partner in crime, Izuku deserved at least some say in how they spent the next month. Oh, also you're going to be joining me on the weekend, right? It'd suck to work on this without you. It'd suck more not to work on it. Progress without Izuku was better than no progress at all. Izuku did the thing he did whenever she ambushed him, turning red and mumbling before he came to his senses and realized it was just her. He was so jumpy around girls. It was kind of cute. I should be able to make it. And well, as for what we should work on, I was hoping we could go with one of my ideas. You have an idea? That was unusual. In the 2 months she had been working with Izuku, he was a great help for bouncing ideas off of and developing her own inventions, such as finding new and exciting ways to use her gadgets. But this would be his first original idea. It's nothing, just forget about it. He pushed her arm off with a shrug. Just another reminder that he was stronger than he looked and acted. Eventually, he'd stop surprising her, or not. Surprises were good. They kept things interesting, and Izuku was just that. Interesting. No way, you have my interest now. There's no way you're going anywhere until I see your idea. With a spin, she was behind him, rummaging through the pocket where he kept his notebooks on quirks. He didn't keep all of them on him, but he had the 2 he finished since the start of the year, and oh, a new one? Mei. It's not in there. He pulled away from her, blushing. I started a new notebook during lunch last week. Once he righted himself, he opened up a new pouch on his bag. She'd remember that one and produced a new notebook. It was green and had a different title than his quirk notes. Here, it's on the first couple of pages. The blueprints aren't all there. It's a stupid idea. She took the notebook. It felt like her first blueprint, so pure and full of ideas. But it was the title that stuck out to her. Synergistics? Ignore that it was. It's perfect. She spun around, zooming in at the title. I was thinking about what we were going to call our company, and Midoriya Industries just didn't roll off the tongue, so it probably wouldn't have sold well. But Synergistics is amazing. It's not a real word and it describes us perfectly. It does? His smile was filled with pride. And wait, company? Yep, we're co-founders of Synergistics. I should pitch this to the business department. I'm sure they'll love us. Especially if we show them some of our babies. Wait, no, let's announce ourselves at the National Gadget Fair. Endless possibilities, all ending with large bank accounts to make even more beautiful babies stretched out before her. But first, they needed to find a good project for the science fair. Oh wait, you had a concept in here. It's nothing really, just an idea I got while watching some of the hero classes. He was muttering again. If we go with it, we'd have to get some of the hero class to help demonstrate it. He continued to mumble. Not a single detail was lost on her, however. She opened a book and she could not fight the smile on her face. Izuku's design hit her trifecta of awesome, fun to build, profitable, and practical. The details and diagram were complete in some areas, but in places the gaps of Izuku's knowledge were evident. Still, that's why she was here. You're asking for a lot with these. Okay, we don't have to. Alright, we'll do it. She grabbed onto Izuku's arm once again. Come on. We need to get to the workshop as soon as possible. I already know how I can increase the power output of the magnets while keeping the weight reasonable. Wait a minute. I actually wanted to eat lunch today. Who has time for food when there's baby making to do? Why did everybody look at them and blush? XXXX. So, do you always ride your bike to school? She'd never actually seen Izuku out of school before. The uniform did not do him justice. He had definition. His claves looked like he was hiding a hamburger made of rock under his skin. She couldn't wait for larger projects with him where those muscles could be put to good use. Sadly, their current project was rather small. But still with a big bang. No, Izuku shook his head, looking down at the white and red mountain bike that served as a barrier between them. Just on the weekends? My train pass is only for school. Ah, well, thanks for walking me home. It sucks that Higura Sensei wouldn't let us stay any longer. We're making such good progress on your project. I think if we had a few more hours we could have had a working prototype. She flexed, the sweater she wore in the morning wrapped around her waist, leaving her tank top exposed. With spring turning to summer, it was still hot even as the sun began to set. Izuku reached over to bouncing once of the singed hairs that framed her face. One that doesn't explode this time? She huffed, turning away from him. It's all in the name of progress. If we get all the explosions out of our product in the testing phase, that means that they won't explode once we get them into our customers' hands. And as a fledgling company, Synergistics does not need a lawsuit on our hands. It wasn't that Izuku was unscathed either. He had more than his fair share of shocks and more than a few cuts on his hands from their most recent project, but they would have something truly amazing. Plus, she got to spend more time in the workshop. And more time with Izuku, so that was like a triple win. So you'll be coming again tomorrow, right? She smiled, showing him her gums. I promise to keep the explosions and electrocutions limited to me. I don't need you trying to claim workman's comp on me. I wonder how the legal class would react to that? Gasp. You wouldn't dare. Izuku laughed. Did you really just say gasp? Yep. That gives me a new idea. Mei spun on her heel, walking back to talk directly to Izuku. What if we make a device that whenever you do something cool it will do an onomatopoeia? That way heroes can be like the old comic book characters from before quirks. Wait, who would buy something like that? Never mind. Could you imagine All Might using it? Every time he went to punch something it'd be like, smash, or slam. The villains would die of laughter before he could actually punch them. It'd be going flex, bulge, muscle, every time he walked. Mei smiled. Maybe we should make it just for fun. Could be a good exercise for us after we finish your project. Really, Mei, you're doing most of the heavy lifting. It's as much mine as it is yours. He smiled at her. After all, it is a product of Synergistics. Music to her ears. Glad you're finally seeing the light, Izuku. First, we need to make a splash at the science fair, then we need to think about the sports festival, and then we go to the National Gadget Fair. And by the time we graduate, we'll be a household name. Before she knew it, they had come to a crossroads, where Izuku's path home split from hers. I'll see you tomorrow, right? We still have a lot to work to do if we want to be ready for the fair. She asked, leaning forward, to get as close as possible to him. I'll have to see if my mom wants to do anything, but yeah. If I can, I'll meet you here at 9. Oh, I get an escort. See ya tomorrow, Izuku. When she got home, Her parents asked her why she was in such a good mood. Her response was that she spent all day making babies with Izuku and was going to do the same thing tomorrow. A's received a call that Monday regarding sex ed. In theory, he had no reason to be nervous. Their device worked. It worked brilliantly, and thanks to May they even managed to improve the power each magnet had by an order of magnitude. So again, there was absolutely nothing he had to worry about. All he had to do was stand next to the board and help the judges and curious heroes and students with the demonstration. It wasn't like he had to go speak on the main stage or anything. Hey, Izuku. May rounded the corner, a giant smile on her face, her goggles were down and she was zooming around on her hoversalls. Numerous other gadgets were hanging around her person like she was ready to do battle. Or in her case, ready to show off their hard work. Guess what? You got an offer? Izuku asked, wiping the sweat from his hands. May was here. That was good. Maybe now he can stop trying to fumble his way through their presentation, even if he only had to do it to a few students. The judges still hadn't made their way over to him. May snorted and spun around before zooming in on his face. Eventually, he'd get used to her lack of personal space. But that day was so not today. Even if May was his best friend, okay, she was kind of his only friend, everybody else in their class kind of blended into the background the more time he spent with her. And it was hard to regret it. Of course. But more importantly, I got us up on the stage. She pointed towards the stage where another inventor was going over her invention, some kind of a scythe that was also a gun. That's great, May, I'm sure you'll... I'm not going up there. May zoomed behind him, shoving their demo into his hands and pushing him towards the stage. That's all on you, Izuku. What, why me? You're the better, she silenced him with a finger. Don't worry so much, Izuku, you'll do great. Besides, I need to be down here showing off all our other stuff. They only allow one invention at a time. Oh, so that's what this was. He should have figured it was just more exposure. And it's your brain, baby, so there's no one better to show it off. Despite his protests, he was thrust out onto the stage, holding their invention with nothing more than a "you can do it" from May. The judges, 3 pro heroes, Kamui Woods, MP Lady, and Ms. Joke. At least it wasn't All Might. That'd probably be too much for him to handle. Holding the dozen or so black balls in his hands that were half the size of a softball, Izuku walked forward. Hello. Hey, he didn't stutter, that was good. Now all he needed to do was to introduce himself and not mess up presenting their magnetic cage. It was a simple concept. A group of magnets that were tuned to each other could be activated for a quick takedown via linking metallic bars that constricted whatever they wrapped around. Instead, all came out with some kind of a gurgling noise. Hey, wait a minute, aren't you that quirkless kid that got scalded by Death Arms? Lady asked, tapping her chin. How'd you get into UA? Well, that is, Izuku Midoriya, another pro hero and Class 1A teacher, Eraserhead said. Trailing behind him was a group of his students. Received a recommendation from All Might after his heroics, and from what I heard has been performing well in the support course. Something that can't be said for some of my students. Though, Eraser. Marry me. Ms. Joker shouted, standing up from her seat, her smile threatening to swallow up her face. No. 1A was Kachin's class, but he didn't see him there. The 6 students that followed Shota Sensei all cringed at their sensei's barb, scribbling down notes. This was likely a punishment for not doing well on a test, like in middle school for the science fair. That's right, Izuku mumbled. He recognized some of those students. Shota Sensei? May, can I have a few of your students help demonstrate this? If that's okay, that is? Shota nodded, turning back to his students. If you participate, that'll be 5 extra points on your report. I just need 3 of them based on their quirks if you don't mind, Izuku mumbled, still holding the magnetic balls like they were miniature oranges. This better be worth it, Emilady grumbled. Again Eraserhead nodded. Do you know what kinda? Actually I do. Denki with his electrification quirk, Ochiko with her quirk zero gravity, and if Idro with his hardening quirk would be willing to act as the villain, that would be helpful. Was it creepy he knew their names and quirks without actually talking to any of them? Was this why Kachin called him a nerd? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be awkward. Hey, don't worry. Ejiro hopped onto the stage. Katsuki complained about you a lot. Said you had a nerd about quirks? Makes sense you'd know about us. Yeah, Denki joined him. Besides, it feels nice getting recognized. I'll help as well, it looks like fun. Achiko bounced up next to her two classmates. Just tell us what you need from us. Right? First Ejiro, if you could stand back and activate your quirk, just for safety reasons. Izuku held up a handful of the Catchem balls. These were made by myself and Mei Hatsum. We call them Catchem balls. The intended purpose of them is to offer a quick and simple way of capturing a villain. Each ball will link with another to form a binding of sorts, and then those bindings will be magnetically attracted to each other. To demonstrate, he threw a handful of them at Ejiro, 4 out of the 6 hit him, and then activated, the magnets letting out a dull hum before the bindings formed around his wrists and then forcing his arms together. Hey, these are pretty cool. They can be set to activate remotely or when they collide with something, allowing for traps to be set and quick release if needed. Izuku clicked the small remote and the balls retracted, falling to the ground before Ejiro caught them. Their utility can also be expanded based on a hero's quirk. Ochaka, could you use your quirk on these? Sure. The cute brown-haired girl smiled, touching each of the magnetic balls. It took a bit of work to keep them from floating off, but eventually, the majority of the magnets were weightless. In theory, the combined weightlessness will be combined to magnify the effect and well. I'll just show you. Again, Izuku threw the devices towards Ejiro. They floated in the air before bouncing off of Ejiro's hardened skin and then activating. The effect was what he had hoped for, Ejiro spinning helplessly in the air. As you can see, the combined weight cancellation has left Ejiro more helpless than before. Next. Izuku breathed, looking out into the audience. He had an audience. There were so many people looking at him, watching him present their invention. Oh no, he felt lightheaded, like he was about to puke. He needed to lie down. He caught Mei standing in the crowd. A wide, proud smile on her face as she gave him the thumbs up. That was right, he wasn't doing this just for him. He was doing it for her. As long as he kept that in his mind, he'd be able to do this. He continued the presentation, demonstrating how Denki's quirk could be used to amplify the device, all while ignoring the crowd and focusing on Mei. Once he was finished, he couldn't get down soon enough. Izuku! Mei screamed, charging at him with the hover saws the moment he stepped down from the stage. She wrapped her arms around his neck, forcing her boobs into his chest and spinning around with him. Her face was really close, closer than she normally got. That was great. Did you see the judges? They were so into it. I knew sending you up there was the right choice. So, Mei's chest was soft. Really soft. It might be the softest thing he'd ever felt. Which lead him to the question. Why wasn't she wearing a bra? Girls wore those, especially the busta ones. Right? No wait, this was Mei. She was just his friend and partner, and maybe he might have something of a crush on her. She was pretty, smart, nice, cute, talented, and just so many things, but beyond all that, she was also Mei. Whoa, check out the PD on your students, Ms. Joker snickered from behind them. How come you never let me hold you like that? Because your jokes are bad. Shota's reply was flat. And we're not dating. And neither are they. Higuri-sensei joined them. Mei just lacks an understanding of personal space. Mei still hadn't let go of him, her arms still wrapped around his neck, and her boobs were still pressed into his chest. Izuku doesn't mind because we're partners. He did mind. He minded a lot. He was going to remember this hug for the rest of his life. And the embarrassment of how long it's been going on, he should probably say something or at least move out of her grasp. Maybe he did have a quirk and it was being powerless to girls. His body just wouldn't move. Mei, Power Loader growled, scratching the back of his head. Please let Izuku go so we can talk about your results. Mei let go and stood at his side, beaming with pride. We got first prize, right? Oh, or wait, someone wants to buy one of our babies? I'll take a set if they're for sale. Ms. Joke chimed in. It'd make catching bad guys easier with my quirk. Especially if we can make them tickle people. Oh, that'd be a good idea. Mei hummed, bouncing back and forth, the ideas already forming in her head. But wait, the results? Did we win? Higuri-sensei sighed and produced a blue ribbon. The judges were impressed by the simplicity and practicality of your project and have rewarded you with first prize in the science fair. Congratulations, you'll be going to the National Gadgets Fair as well. His side scratching at the scruff on his chin, it was the most of his jawline that he'd ever shown in his hero uniform. Now, I have to find someone to escort you. Did you hear that, Izuku? Mei laughed, spinning around on the hoversalls, laughing all the way as she snatched up the ribbon from Higury's metallic hand. We won. This is the first step towards Synergistics being a household name. Mei stopped and gasped. We need to celebrate, Higuri-sensei, treat us to beer. You're too young, no? Fine. Izuku, take me out for chocolate. XXXX. Are you two on a date? The waitress that asked, smiling as she balanced a tray and took their orders due to her extra set of arms. She pointed towards an ad that was basically a giant chocolate sundae. Because we have a special today that's for our lovers Saturday Sunday. No, it's not like that, we're just here to celebrate is all. Izuku explained. His face felt like it hadn't taken a break from blushing since he woke up this morning. It was only getting worse as the day went on thanks to being so near to Mei. It was obvious that she was cute, and even her weird personality was becoming adorable. But that didn't mean anything, he was allowed to think she was cute. Right? Right, Mei? After the rewards and formal announcements, Mei had dragged him halfway across town. To a cafe for some chocolate. Apparently, she was a chocolate fiend, a secret she had managed to keep hidden. It also just went to show just how little he understood her. Wait, if we say yes we can order this, right? Mei snatched the ad, a bit of drool forming on her face as her eyes zoomed in on it. Wait, did that mean she wouldn't be opposed to the idea of dating him? No, that couldn't be it. Mei was just frightening in the way that social norms took a back seat to her goals, something that if she were a villain would be terrifying. What do you say, Izuku? Want to split a sundae with me and be my date? Somehow, his blush began to blush again and he began to stutter. This was worse than her baby-making comments. What did it even mean? She was so focused on the chocolate, did that mean that'd she'd date him for chocolate? Maybe if he'd bring her chocolate? If this was a date, did it mean that they were dating? If they were dating, that might mean that they were in a relationship. If they were in a relationship, that meant that they were more than just partners. Which meant he needed to tell his mom, which meant he needed to meet her parents, which meant that they should have dinner. What if her father didn't like him? What if he was a pro-hero that didn't think he was worth her daughter? His mind was racing, trying to solve the toughest problem in the world. You don't actually have to be on a date to order it, the woman laughed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It's just a marketing ploy to get couples to order less spoons. If you want it, I'll even give you the discount. To celebrate whatever it is you're celebrating. Ooh, that's great. We'll take it. Mei slammed the ad onto the table and wiped away a bit of drool that had formed on her mouth. Excellent, that'll be right up. Izuku drummed his fingers along the bottom of his eat, trying really hard not to stare at Mei, which was really hard because she was zoomed in on him like a hawk. You shouldn't be so nervous, Izuku, she smiled, leaning forward to rest her elbows on the table and then cupping her head. Her slender arms were exposed up to her shoulders, thanks to the sleeveless work shirt she chose to wear that day, that might be a bit tight around her chest. You're still shaking after that speech. You did great. Better than I could have, especially because you showcased how our catchem balls could be used with quirks. Come on and relax. Because tomorrow we're going right back into the workshop to start working on the gadget fair. She really didn't have any idea that she was the reason why he was so nervous. That made sense. If Mei wanted to date him or wanted him as a boyfriend, she would have said something. They'd probably already be dating. No, she just thought of him as a friend and a partner. You're right, Mei, I'll try to keep that in mind. Do you have any ideas you want to work on? She smiled like a cat playing with a mouse. Oh, I have a few bouncing around. He'd keep his feelings to himself. Besides, he doubted he could tell her anyways. News of the attack ran through the school with a calm fury. The response from the public and media was much more heated, with parents calling to make sure that their children were okay. Izuku didn't remember what he was doing when the news hit, just the feeling that followed afterward. Anger. Anger that he wasn't there and that he didn't help. They were attacked. And Class 1A became heroes. They survived a mass attack from a group of villains, and they fought them off long enough for All Might to show up and save the day. It was all the media talked about, even after a week. But the feeling of not doing enough was still there. Mei's concern stopped when she found out no one died, then went right back to work on their auto-stabilizer project, though her hands were shaking. Her work ethic was something to admire. Izuku, Higuro Sensei, waved him over the moment they entered the workshop for the day. There were a dozen or so numbered cases that covered his sensei's normally clutter-free and well-organized desk. With the upcoming sports festival and the internship program for the hero courses, I've been asked to make several repairs and modifications to their costumes. As you can see, I'm a little bit swamped at the moment. And you'd like me to help you? There were so many boxes. Would you like Mei? Mei is a creative and hard worker, but I can't trust her not to modify the design, which could be problematic. He raised a gloved hand. How did he even do such fine work with those gloves on? Or see with that helmet on? You, however, can follow directions and are quick, adaptable and reliable. Besides, it'll be healthy for you to grow on your own. Izuku stared at the chests. They were getting ready for the sports festival as much as anybody else was, especially Mei, who was halfway to being fully equipped, though her goal was different from everybody else. Get to the biggest crowd to make sure there's a lot of people to watch as she displayed their gadgets. He honestly felt bad about whoever her opponent was. I'd be happy to help you, Sensei. Izuku bowed. There were better ways for him to show off than at the sports festival. While the catch-em balls were their first success, that was a generic device that could work with a wide range of quirks. Costume design was more personal and included each hero's unique powers and quirks. Most of their class was already opting out of the sports festival. But I don't think that I'll be finished with what I need for the sports festival. Higuro Sensei nodded, humming in understanding. I see. Tell me, Izuku, how much time would you be willing to spend a day in the workshop? He looked to Mei, who was already buried in one of their current projects. Somehow they had effectively laid claim to a fourth of the workshop as their own private lab, and it was spreading with each prototype. Some students hadn't even finished their first invention. As long as he was with Mei, he could probably spend the whole day in here working on projects, caught in that creative bliss that she seemed to inspire. Well, on my own, maybe a couple extra hours to finish up a few projects. But if Mei was there, I could probably go all day. I see. Well then. I fully expect everything to be in working order when you depart. Furthermore, all rules must be followed, like I'm standing right behind you. And no matter what, the door is to be locked at 8. That gives you an extra 3 hours if you're fast with cleanup, and make sure that Mei actually gets home no matter how hard she begs to pull an all-nighter. Power Loader said. His voice was almost prideful, like the time he had been elected student secretary back in middle school. He turned back to his desk, cracking open the first of many boxes. Feel free to take any box you'd like. The changes and repairs are listed on the file inside. Ugh, Sensei? Was there a point to all that? Higuro stood rigidly and then snapped his fingers. Right? I'm supposed to give you that speech when I give you the key. He pulled a key out from one of the drawers. It was a plain key that might have gone to a door or a bike lock. Right, here you go. Izuku stared at the key that now rested in his hand like it was a medal that symbolized all he had accomplished this year. Wait, are you sure about this, Sensei? I mean, this is a huge responsibility, and Izuku, you have earned my trust. Plus, I'll stop getting phone calls at night from Mei asking me to open up the workshop. She does that to you too? Like clockwork. But I mean it, no staying the night here. Every night must be spent at your own home in your own bed. The workshop closes at 8 even if you have a key. Izuku clutched the key, smiling. There was so much he'd be able to do with this now. An extra 4 hours a day to spend with Mei working on their babies. What about the weekend? Higuro sighed, scratched the back of his neck. Just don't let Mei drag you here before the sun rises. Don't worry, Sensei, I'll make sure she knows that sleep is a good thing. Despite the fact that Mei's energy levels were constant and the girl frequently admitted that she hadn't slept in 3 days while drinking a cup of coffee. He hoped that she was kidding, but knew that she wasn't. It was just one of the many things that he liked about her. See that you do. Now get to work. Even with the extra time, we're going to be swamped to get things ready. Right? Mei's natural to him, having the key to the workshop, was to loudly proclaim that they were going to make so many more babies. Once more causing their neighbors to blush. Shouldn't they be used to it by now? She was less enthused when she found out that he was going to spend most of the extra time helping Higuro-sensei with his work. XXXX. May. She hummed at him, still focused on the electronics of one of their gadgets. It was their first Saturday to have the workshop all to themselves, of course. Izuku went out of his way to let the class know that the workshop would be open Saturday, but it was just them, which surprised a grand total of no one. Did you eat today? She hummed again. Technically, she ate a bag of chips at 1 in the morning alongside a bottle of soda while working on designs. But that wasn't important. She had a full day of baby making to do with or without Izuku's help. They were partners. They did stuff together, they worked on projects together. They took jobs together about stuff together. Now her baby-making abilities were down by 40% or more. May. Yes, Izuku? May asked, finally turning to her traitorous partner. Wait, no, traitor was a bad idea. He was still acting in the best interest for Synergistics, or at least what he thought was their best interest. But instead of talking about it, he went ahead and took on an additional project while they were already pressed for time. But it did serve to get their name out there, especially among their classmates who would no doubt become their future customers. Would you quit spacing out and focus? Izuku laughed, snapping his fingers in front of her face, causing her quirk to activate. And now she was staring at a leaf. Fantastic. What do you want? I'm trying to work. Your stomach's growling. Izuku reached behind his workstation that was covered with some hero's costume to pull out his bag. The worst thing was that they couldn't even improve it. Not that she would have. Listening to the customer was the first step to good customer service, but she'd probably just leave a list of recommendations. I'll eat later. She turned back to her work. Now that she was aware of it, she really was hungry. Really hungry. It felt like her stomach was trying to eat itself. Or that there was a tiger in her stomach, judging from how it sounded. It could stop growling anytime it wanted, like right now. Please stop growling. It's not helping her ignore Izuku out of spite. Something smelled good. Really good. Her nose took over and guided her to the bento boxes that Izuku was unwrapping. It looked so good. Rice with black seasoning, strips of beef, rolls of sushi, vegetables, and cherry tomatoes, and wait, did she smell eggs and bacon? Her stomach growled and her mouth watered. When I told my mom what we were doing today, she offered to make us a couple of bentos so we can work while we eat. Izuku handed her a box with a shaky hand and a nervous smile. So, here. She shouldn't take it. She was mad at him out of principle. But at the same time, oh, who the hell cares? She got good food and to make more babies because of Izuku. It was impossible to stay mad at him when he did that. Your mom's awesome. The bacon was the first thing into her mouth, followed by just about everything else. Right? So how many more costumes do you need to do today? And are you sure I can't help? It's just repairs. If we team up it'll be quick. Also, I think the auto stabilizer is too sensitive. It appears to pick up on the wind. Do you think that we should try to account for natural human reactions? Also, the auto punch causes a great deal of backlash, and she stopped not because of the food in her mouth, but because of Izuku's laughter. See, you're much more talkative when you're not mad at me, May, he said, taking the first bite out of his own bento, somehow managing to get a bit of rice stuck on his cheek. I'm sorry, I promised to help Higuro-sensei out without asking you, but look at it this way. Now we can spend more time in the workshop. I know, okay, but next time tell me. We're partners, Izuku. Just think about all the babies we could be making. Or at the very least let me help you. May reached over with her chopsticks and stole that bite of rice from Izuku's cheek. And just as she thought, that made him blush and stop talking. Now hurry up and eat. We have a lot to work to do before we have to go home. I want to be combat ready for the sports festival. You are absolutely insane. Whatever you say, Mr. 1 million points. May spun, sticking her tongue out at Izuku. Or are you just made you lost to a guy that looked ready to take a nap? Not that she would have fared much better against that quirk. Hell, she probably would have lost without knowing what exactly happened, and there would have gone any chance she had of showing off her babies. That speed quirk guy was the best opponent she could have asked for. Everyone else would have been more difficult to show off around. Izuku laughed, scratching the back of his head. Yeah, sorry I couldn't show off more of our gear during the main match. Or during the obstacle course. You belly flopped onto those mines with a metal plate you dragged through the course. I'm starting to doubt that you were actually bullied with how fit you are. An image of Izuku taking off his jacket to twist a wrench for her with his muscles bulging under his shirt was something that had been ingrained into her mind for a while now. Though, I suppose it's because you're still a nerd. Hey! Izuku pouted, his face red, and he took another step back from her, one that she matched by going forward again. Hitoshi was a good opponent, and out of everybody I could have lost to, I'm happy it was to him. Mei gasped, placing a hand over her face. Oh my, does Izuku have a crush on another man? How scandalous. What? More blushing. Teasing Izuku was quickly becoming a distant second place to making babies. He stuttered back against the wall, sweating as he put his hands up to try and ward her off. No, that's not it at all. I don't have a crush on him, I just respect him is all. Oh, so do you have a crush on someone then? She pressed, not quite certain why she wanted to know this so much. Maybe it was because a happy Izuku was a much better partner than a depressed Izuku. Sure, that sounded about right. That and teasing. Hoo. I don't have a crush on anyone, Izuku mumbled. With the way he was blush, it meant that. She actually didn't know what it meant. People always said she was bad at social cues, which was why she was blunt. Or was it the other way around? It didn't matter. What about you? Do you have anyone you like? Izuku asked. Mei stared at him until he realized how stupid he sounded. She didn't have time for boyfriends. Hell, she barely even talked to anybody that wasn't Izuku, and he was the exception. If I did, I'd have less time to spend with you. She grabbed him by the wrist. Now come on. If we run, we should be able to make it to the workshop with enough time to fix some of the bugs we found today. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she became vaguely aware that Izuku was somehow blushing more, and he was certainly mumbling a lot more. Hopefully about some of the bugs she noticed. Still, they had to hurry. With the trains, they'd be able to skip having to board the bus with everyone else, get a few extra hours in the workshop. Was it wrong to skip out on the awards ceremony? Probably. Did she care? Nope. Besides, Higuro-sensei said that their dedication to the craft was admirable. Pretty soon they'll have their commission's license and be able to take requests for gear. Just thinking about all the possibilities was enough to put a smile on her face. When they exited the stadium, they saw a crowd of people still listening to the fights still going on inside. It sounded like Kachin and Ice Boy were going at it. So one of them beat Izuku's man crush. What were the brackets again? It didn't matter. Izuku. She turned to see a short round lady with green hair and a face like Izuku running towards them, well, kind of running with a bag of groceries on her arm, a leek sticking out of it. Oh my goodness, you didn't tell me you were actually competing. What were you thinking jumping onto those mines like that? You could have gotten seriously hurt. I'm just glad that you didn't fight in your match. I was so scared that I ran over here the moment I saw. Then why did she have groceries? Mei tilted her head, staring at the small woman that was probably related to Izuku. Mom? Oh hey, she was right. Izuku whined, standing next to her, and tried to shake the grip she had around his wrist. Nope. She wasn't going to let him go away, not when there was baby making to do. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to worry about me. I wasn't even going to really compete, we were just going to showcase our gadgets for potential buyers. Still, that was so reckless. Izuku's mom fidgeted, rubbing her hands together. She then looked towards their hands and squealed. Izuku, you didn't tell me you had a girlfriend. Who's this? Hello there, I'm Inko Midoriya, thank you for taking care of my son. Inko extended her free hand towards Mei. Oh, she was going to have fun with this later. Izuku spoke first. Maybe his quirk was blushing, he was actually good at it. Mom, this is Mei, my workshop partner, and we're not dating. Inko gasped, clapping her hands over her mouth, staring at her with her eyes wide. Oh my goodness, Izuku, you didn't tell me she was so pretty. Are you sure you're not dating her? Or even considering it? Mom, it's not like that. Mei just smiled and finally released her grip on Izuku's wrist to give Inko a proper bow. It was for the best if she treated her like a client or executive that was lending her Izuku, which meant she would use all of her manners. All 6 of them. It's a pleasure to meet you. I enjoy making babies with your son. So polite too. Inko smiled before she snapped her fingers, her face growing excited. Oh, I know, Why don't you join us for dinner tonight, May? I'd love to get to know you more. You and Izuku can even show me some of the babies you've made. Perfect. She'd impress Izuku's mother, and then there'd be no force willing to separate them. Besides more free and delicious food, that bento was a lot better than anything her own mom cooks. Just cooked. Sure, that sounds great. Izuku's protests fell on deaf and very hungry ears. XXXX. Inko was about the motherliest mother to ever mom. She was just as sweet and kind as Izuku was, and even had his habit of mumbling about stuff whenever she got nervous. Plus the house was well maintained and smelled like fresh food. Especially right about now, while the woman had forced both her and Izuku out of the kitchen to prep for the meal. And so Mei sat on Izuku's bed smiling as she soaked in the room where her genius partner had grown up in. It was very All Might, but it looked like that part of his life was being swallowed up by the love for inventing that she had found buried in Izuku. Blueprints and notebooks were organized neatly along on side of the room, with the rewards they had gotten hanging from the wall, as well as their first patent. So, I take it you like All Might? She grinned like a cat, raising an eyebrow at him just to make him jump and start blushing and mumbling. He was actually pretty cute the way he did that. I mean, he was my hero for the longest time, and why I wanted to become a hero in the first place, and why I got accepted to UA in the first place, and I kind of owe him a lot. Izuku half mumbled, standing awkwardly in the middle of his own room. It was like he was trying much harder than normal to avoid looking at her. What if he was disappointed that they didn't get to spend more time in the lab? But how was she supposed to say no to one of their most important benefactors? That was just bad business sense. Is he still your hero? Izuku jumped and looked around his room. The blush was gone, and the smile seemed to fade from his face. He paused at one of the posters of All Might standing in his heroic pose on the words, "Peace and Justice." When he touched it, that smile came back, but it wasn't a happy one. I do, but not in the same way. I think I owe a lot of that to you for showing me that I'm not powerless and that I can fight in my own way. Mei hummed, leaning forward on Izuku's bed so that her elbows rested on her knees. She sucked at reading people. They weren't gadgets or machines. Most of the time it was like they were speaking in a different language. But Izuku understood her. But why couldn't she get him? She searched for the right words. Did something happen between you and All Might? Izuku tensed, hands balling into a fist. But he didn't say anything. Izuku, she stood closing the distance. I'm told that communication is important, and I want to make sure that I understand you. She placed a hand on his shoulder and then another, pulling him into a one-sided hug where she pressed up against his body. She was barely tall enough to rest her chin on his shoulder. Please let me know more about you. Even now he was a curiosity. He was the first person that she found interesting, and the only one that was willing to spend all day with her. The day that I saved Kachin, I met All Might. The villain tried to attack me first, but All Might saved me. I asked him if it was possible for someone like me, someone that didn't have a quirk, if I could become a hero. He told me no, that I should become a police officer or a firefighter instead. He was shaking. But then after I saved Kachin, he met up with me again and offered me a chance to become a hero. He had me train day and night by cleaning up a beach. And that was the All Might's All Right workout you mentioned? No, that's a separate thing that he gave me after I failed. I didn't even get halfway done with his training, and instead of becoming a hero, he suggested I take a support class. He wasn't crying, that was good. But he was still shaking. That could have been why he looked so sad at the start of the year. But that led me to this partnership with you, so I'm actually kind of happy without. It turned out. Mei smiled. Why did her cheeks feel hot? Her heart rate had also increased, and why did Izuku smell so good? Before she met him, she stood atop the world all alone with just her gadgets. But now that fantasy was ever so slightly different, Izuku stood beside her and everything was better. I'm really happy you're with me too, Izuku. I can't wait to see all that we can accomplish together. Dinner is. Inko came into the room and gasped, "Oh my. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." She slammed the door shut without touching it and raced towards the kitchen. I can't believe I'm losing my baby. Wait, Mom. She let go of him when he made for the door, his face red combined with his leafy green hair. He looked like a tomato. Seriously, was he sure blushing wasn't his quirk? He bolted from the door. It's not like that. It was just a hug. Mei stared at her hands, flexing them as she remembered the feeling of Izuku's muscles below them. Muscles were neat. You'll be fine, right? I want you to call me when you land. And when you get the hotel, and at least once every night. You do have separate rooms, right? You're not sharing a room with Mei? Goodness, I hope not. I don't think my heart could take that. His mom fussed over his backpack straps while trying to find another spot to place a bundle of socks. Meanwhile, all he could do was stand there and blush and hope that Mei showed up soon. It's not that she's a bad girl, I actually like her, but I don't want you to rush things, okay? Oh, if you go to beach, remember to put on sunscreen. No matter how tempting it is, don't offer to put any on Mei. She's a big girl, she can do her own. Mom, he groaned, trying to hide his face as best he could. He doubted Mei would even show interest in going to the beach unless it was to test one of their new babies. Don't worry so much, we'll still be in Japan. It's just a short flight to Okinawa. As to how and why they would have a giant gadget fair on a vacation island as opposed to a larger city was beyond him. Even if he had never wanted to go there himself, it was a free trip. And we'll be back in a week. Oh, Inko swooned, wiggling from side to side. I remember when your father took me there on our honeymoon. It was so romantic, and she paused, blinking. I think that was about 9 months before you were born. She blinked, looking at him, then latched onto his shirt, blubbering and fighting a losing battle against tears. I changed my mind. You can't go to Okinawa with a girl like Mei. The romantic atmosphere could lead to an incident. Now he was really blushing. Mom, it's not like that. Mei has no romantic interest in me. I don't even think she has any romantic interest in anything. We're just friends and partners. Even if he might hope otherwise, we'll probably just show off some of our babies and make some new ones as well. She gasped and slapped him on the chest. Don't sell yourself short, Izuku. You're a kind and handsome young man, and any girl would be lucky to have you. I bet there's already a few that have their eyes on you, especially since you're already going to be so successful. So it's too early to give up. The resolve in her eyes lasted only a moment before she began crying again. But it's too soon to start. Mom, everything will be fine, I promise. It wasn't nearly as bad as when he told her he was going to UA, though those worries were more easy to dispel when he told her about being in the support course. Besides, you should be happy about this. I'm going to a national fair for one of my inventions. I am happy. Oh, you just don't understand the woes of a mother. She sighed, placing a hand on her cheek. But you're such a responsible boy, I should worry less. Besides, there's a chaperone that's a pro hero, so you'll be in safe hands. I'm sorry, Izuku. This? A loud honk came from outside, followed quickly by Izuku. Hurry up. He lived on the 3rd story. He knew Mei couldn't take a social cue if it hit her in the face, but surely Ms. Joke would have more tact than that, right? His mother looked out the window and gasped. That wasn't good. A glance and he knew why. Ms. Joke's vehicle was as bright and cheerful as her personality, and it had loudspeakers on it. Wasn't she an underground hero like Mr. Aizawa? Was this a little much? Come on, mean green love machine. Let's get going. We're burning daylight. Apparently not. Bye, Mom. I love you. I'll call you later, bye. He hugged his mother and kissed on the cheek before she could protest again. XXXX. Ms. Joke's car was a recent model, with lots of window and trunk space. While the shape was normal enough, the colors were a different story. It looked like a bunch of children had painted it and then were polished over by a professional, with many visual puns and jokes laid on top of them, and a large red "ha-ha" was painted on the doors. Leaning out of the window was Mei, her goggles down, zooming in on him with a smile on her face. If she was embarrassed to be seen in such a car, she didn't show it. Then again, embarrassment wasn't in Mei's range of emotions, so he shouldn't have expected her to be anything but her normal, overly cheerful self. Come on, I don't want to be late for our big debut. I'm coming. He sprinted towards the door, quickly entering the car, and sitting right next to Mei. He had seen her in casual clothes, school clothes, and her workshop attire, but this was his first time seeing her in a dress. It wasn't a formal dress or anything, just a light green sundress speckled with white spots. Fortunately, it wasn't one of the low-cut ones that would have shown off her boobs. In true Mei fashion, there was a grease stain that covered a vast amount of the skirt. She had on cargo pants underneath. You're wearing a dress? May nodded, lifting her goggles up and giving him one hell of a smile. You bet. I read that this is appropriate attire to wear to Okinawa. It's basically just a long shirt. Alright kiddies. Buckle up, road safety is no joke. Ha. Ms. Joke adjusted the mirror to look him in the eyes. She might be a match for May when it came to the most excited smile he'd ever seen. Please keep your arms, legs, and weird quirk abilities inside the vehicle at all times, and remember to hold to your underwear. Thank you for being our chaperone, Ms. Joke. Oh please, call me Emmy. If I can help it, I won't be putting on my hero costume all week. Emmy laughed and slammed on the gas hard enough to force him back into the seat. Right? Well, thanks again, but why did you agree to escort us? You're not a UA teacher. The fact that she was a teacher for another school also made it slightly unusual. Then again, Kamui Woods and MD Lady tended to help out a lot around the school as well. Ms. Joke made a noise that was somewhere between a laugh and a hiccup. The wheels of her car screeched as she made a sharp turn going way too fast. The momentum was such that Izuku's face squished up against the window for a moment, and May bumped into him. Well, you see, the author decided that he really liked me and decided to include me in the story. Was that a joke? What? Nothing? Damn, I thought that pretending to break an imaginary fourth wall would be funnier than that. Her smile vanished in favor of an exaggerated scowl that lasted for just a moment. Nah, but if you want to go, just look at where we're going. Okinawa. I'd be insane not to say yes to a trip there, and I get a backstage pass to the National Gadgets Fair? I all but volunteered when Power Loader said that. He'd have to find a chaperone. Oh ho ho. May laughed, leaning forward as far as the seatbelt would let her. It had an interesting effect on her breasts, sliding between them and making them more pronounced. Not that he was paying attention to that. You should have told us that you were a gadget nut. We can give you a sneak peek. I already got it. I've been using your catch-em balls every chance I got. Making the bad guys laugh before you toss them is a blast. Oh, but while I have you two hostage. She ran a red light, speeding around the corner so that he slammed into May. He was going to die in this car. Can I make a gadget request? You'll have to go through the proper channels with Higura Sensei. Izuku groaned, righting himself up in the seat again. Why did he have a feeling this was going to sum up this whole trip? What is it? May asked, gripping the front seats with both hands, getting as close to Emmy's face as she could. For once the person on the receiving end didn't bat an eye. Which was good as they went up a ramp onto the freeway, gaining a bit of air. Oh, it's basically the same thing as the catch-em balls, but little hands come out and start tickling the captive. Emmy flopped down the sun visor and handed May one of a drawing that showed a ball with large white hands growing out of it. It'll help keep them disabled so I don't have to use my quirk on them. May sat back looking at the drawing with stars in her eyes. This was going to be a long trip. Oh, when we fly, let me know if you see a giant squid. Those guys really cracking me up. Izuku snorted, then again it might not be so bad. You know, being a hero is a lot of hard work. You have to have the heart of a lion. I just wish they'd lift the ban at the zoo though. Nope, it was going to be that bad. XXXX. Both the convention center and the hotel itself were right on the beach, with beautiful white sand and clear waters for as far as the eye could see. The roads and sidewalks were stuffed with inventors and their inventions. Apparently giant robots were in again. See, Izuku nudged May's side. I told you there would be a bunch of robots. She pouted, crossing her arms under her chest. A bit of drool was on the side of her mouth. It was cute how excited she got over gadgets, even if they weren't their own. So, our baby would have been the best. And look at some of those designs. Some people have no taste when it comes to giant robots. Hey, don't be mad. He chased after her, somehow carrying all of their bags. Emmy had gone to register them at the convention center, which left him and May in charge of the hotel room. Well, mostly him. We can make a giant robot when we get back. May spun around, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. And suddenly his vision was occupied purely by her face and a bit by the small amount of cleavage she displayed. She grabbed him by the arms, her fingers drumming along them like she was playing a keyboard. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say those words. It was at least a day. I have so many designs I want to go over with you. Much material do you think they'd allow us to use? Power Loader Sensei has been getting kind of stingy. You're more excited about this than I thought. He took a step to the side, Mei's face following him like an adorable bee. You can show me the designs when we get to the room. As for the cost, I'm sure if we do well here Higura Sensei will be more willing to let us experiment. Even if they did have more gadgets between the two of them than the rest of the school combined by a large margin. Most of it was due to Mei's endless ingenuity and desire to create things, but hey, he helped make the less practical things practical. Oh, I'm so excited about this. It looked like her normal level of excitement. Without looking away, she dug into her bag that he was carrying and pulled out a stack of papers that was at least an inch thick. Apparently, she came prepared. I hope you're ready to stay up all night going over plans with me. You're not getting a wink of sleep. Izuku just laughed. Hopefully, Emi would enforce a curfew or something. He lacked Mei's endless energy. He was fairly certain that she only really slept because she wasn't allowed to be in the workshop 24/7. Alright, but please wait. Oh wait, what do you have here? The arm has a separate power supply for... I see what you did there. Right? The only problem is the scaling to even get a motor strong enough for that. It would have to be massive or else the vibrations might overpower it. We could set up a dual motor supply. There's enough room there for maybe even a third one, and excess power could be used. Her excitement was contagious, and instead of building up an immunity to it, he was more susceptible to it than ever. By the time they got to their room on the 3rd floor, they had already only gone a tenth of Mei's designs. Emi all but burst into the room an hour later, all smiles until she saw them sitting on the bed surrounded by a pile of blueprints. What the hey kiddos? I show up and you're just doing nerd stuff. Mei either didn't notice or didn't care. Probably both. Oh, we're just discussing ideas for our next project? Izuku laughed. He wasn't quite aware how it had gotten to this point. You're joking, right? You two are not going to spend your time in Okinawa of all places pent up in this little apartment. Emi stomped towards them, her smile now filled with malice. He hadn't had the time to take in the exact dimensions of their room. It was small, barely fitting the 2 beds, a desk along the wall, and a wall-mounted TV. With a flourish, Emi grabbed at her top, popping off all the buttons and tossing to the side with ease, revealing a bikini top with a smiley face on each part. Her skirt unsnapped to a beach cover that was a soft orange color, with black lines that also turned out to be a smiley face. Get your swimsuit on, kiddies. We're going to the beach to relax and enjoy our youths. Mei was only made aware of this when Emi grabbed her by the waist and pulled her into the bathroom. Hey. What? I burn. I'll put sunscreen on ya. This is child abuse. I'm a kid at heart, so it's all good. Izuku blinked at the designs laid before him, then looked out at the Sunday and the beautiful sunny day that stretched out before them. He was going to go to the beach with Mei. He was going to see Mei in a bathing suit. He was not mentally prepared for this task. It wasn't that she hated the outdoors. There was lots of room for testing things and people tended to not get mad when something exploded, nor did she hate sand. It had uses, counterweights, even if it did get everywhere and cause problems for a lot of their devices, and she sure as hell didn't hate getting dirty. There were no less than 3 grease stains on her at all times, even after a bath. No, what she hated was idleness. Traveling was one thing because at least then she was going somewhere to do a thing. But just sitting on the beach watching the waves was not just boring. It was also unproductive. And it was all because of that strange green-haired woman that had bad jokes. Still, she was a client, kind of. She ran her hands through the soft sand of the beach, her toes buried under just enough to find the coldness that laid below the hot surface. The shade that Emi's giant smiley-faced beach umbrella had moved 2 degrees, which, judging by the position of the sun and the time when she was separated from all forms of technology, she still had approximately 80 degrees left until she was allowed to go back to their room and resume planning. The worst part was that Izuku wasn't even suffering. The moment they got onto the beach and Emi tore his shirt off, he was swarmed by various peoples. Even now he was playing beach volleyball with a bunch of college students, and that included girls in bikinis that kept touching him. Why'd they keep touching him? They had no reason to keep touching him. It was always with long looks while they shook their bodies. At least it looked like Izuku somewhat uncomfortable by their attention. But did he have to enjoy it so much? He was her partner, not theirs. You know, Ms. Joke laughed from behind her, casually flipping a page of her book. Was that seriously all she was going to do? Just sit at the beach and read? Talk about hypocritical. If you took off that t-shirt, I'm sure Izuku would be all over you. You really should just be glad we can wear the same size top. I was able to give you a super cute two-piece. Mei blinked, thumbing at the plain white shirt she was wearing. She was here against her will. This was supposed to be a time of exciting baby making. Not sitting at the beach doing nothing. And the top she was forced into wasn't nearly as cute as any of her babies were. Especially not the giant robot her and Izuku would build. But why would he pay any more attention to her with her shirt off? It wasn't like she'd be naked or anything weird like that. Besides, those other girls were wearing swimsuits. I don't think that would make a difference. He's having fun over there. Emmy closed her book with a snap. Oh come on Mei, you're cuter than any of them. Bustier too, which believes me that goes a long way. I saw him sneaking peeks at your girls in the car. If you want Izuku's attention, all you have to do is grab it. Emmy's smile vanished, replaced with a soft frown as she stared out into the ocean. But, you might want to let him know how you feel soon, otherwise it'll just get to the point where no matter what you do he'll think the whole thing is a joke. How I feel? She felt bored, a little bit hungry, and that she was wasting her time. Emmy nodded, her smile was back, but aside from it just being a smile she had no idea how to read it. Izuku's was the only person she bothered to learn about. And that was just cause it was important to read her teammate. Yeah, about him. How I feel about Izuku? She pulled her knees up into her chest, zooming in on Izuku as a bunch of girls kept talking to him. Well, right now he's making me mad. She blinked and looked at Emmy. Wait, why am I mad? Oh, you're one of those types. Oh man, this is going to be even more fun than I thought it was going to be. Emmy hopped onto her feet and stretched from side to side. I'll give you a hint and lots of time for some unsupervised fun. You're jealous. She laughed before bounding away. Let me know if you figure it out. Jealous? What did she have to be jealous of? It wasn't like Izuku was over there making babies with some other girl. He was just playing volleyball. She didn't want to play volleyball, so she had nothing to be jealous of. And what did her being busty have to do with anything? All it did was cost her money. Bras were expensive. Maybe she should make her own bra? Izuku could help. She zoomed in on him with her quirk, trying to garner some clue. In many ways, mysterious were just puzzles, and puzzles were like following a blueprint, so she should be able to figure this out. Her hands twitched, gripping the hem of her shirt as she stared at Izuku's chest. Then his arm, his bicep bulging like a coiled snake as he scratched the back of his head while talking to some airhead stupid-looking blonde with more brains than boobs. She reached out and touched Izuku and... Oh, the answer came to her like a new idea. She was jealous that Izuku wasn't spending time with her. That was easy to fix, and it'd be over as soon as they left the beach, got food, and returned to their room to keep Emmy up until the wee hours of the night making plans for their giant robot. She could just sit here and wait. Now that she recognized the feeling, it was easy to ignore. But then that blonde touched Izuku's muscles. Oh, well, it's nothing special really, I'm just in the support course. He took a step back. This blonde girl could barely speak a coherent sentence. She was a foreigner, but he didn't know where from. It wasn't America. And she was pushy. Pushier than Mei, which was a feat. Ooh, she cooed, shaking her hips, her accent thicker than cold syrup. Modest and cute? Vu truly are adorable. It was hard to tell if she was flirting with him, or if that was just how she was friendly. Worse was that he couldn't even just ask her to leave. He'd been away from Mei for long enough. He should never have let those guys trick him into playing volleyball. Oh well, that is. Nervous too? She purred, taking a step forward and placing a hand on his chest. And Vio have such powerful muscles. Want spend time with me? She pressed forward, bumping her chest against his. Alone, perhaps? His mouth wasn't working, noises were coming out, but it was nothing but stuttering and not a single word. His mind also wasn't working. A cute foreign girl wanted to spend time with him? Alone? What did that mean? This was like one of those erotic manga he read once. Only real. And oh God, what was he supposed to do? Where was a hero when he needed them? Where was Ms. Joke? Wasn't it her job to make sure this didn't happen? He should have stayed in the room. Izuku. Mei's voice sounded really close. Oh, she was standing right next to him, arms behind her back, chest out, and a less than pleased look on her face. She had left the t-shirt behind, allowing him to glimpse her in a bathing suit for the first time. It was an image that would be engraved into his mind until the end of time. I'm jealous. Before his mind could process what she just said, she grabbed onto his arm, pulling him away from the blonde girl. His arm fell into her chest for just a moment, but the sensation lingered for a long time. Wait, did she say jealous? She was jealous that another girl was talking to him? What did that mean? Why wasn't there a class on girls? Oh my goodness! The blonde gasped, placing a hand over her mouth. Are VO2, how VO say? Partners? He wanted to tell her that she meant a couple, boyfriend or girlfriend. But his mind kind of stopped when Mei hugged onto his arm harder, forcing her breasts against him. She was being so clingy. And it was really nice. Really, really nice. That's right. Mei chirped, a large smile on her face. She began to guide him away from the blonde. So go find someone else. I'm taking Izuku back. Oppo. Wait, did Mei know that she the foreigner meant couple? As in boyfriend and girlfriend? As in something more than friends? Or was she just saying yes because they were partners in school and inventing stuff? And what was she jealous of? What did it mean? Did it mean she liked him? Maybe? He needed an adult, a translator, and his mom. Wait, no, that would make things worse? Mei, he tried to say more, but nothing came out. He shouldn't be nervous around Mei. Sure, he liked her. But he also talked to her a lot more than anyone else. Talking to her was easier than talking to Kachin. He swallowed, balling his hand. I don't like you not spending time with me. She still didn't let go of his arm. One of her hands was running up and down it, squeezing his biceps. Her smile growing wider with each passing moment. I was bored not doing anything while you were over there having fun. I don't know what to do at the beach, so you have to teach me, and spend time with me. She smiled, her face getting really close to his, her cross-haired eyes focused on him. It was the kind of look she normally gave something that interested her. We are partners after all. Okay, well, why don't we, His eyes fell on the beach supply kit that Ms. Joke and procured. There were buckets. It was childish, but it seemed like something that Mei would enjoy. It was the closest thing at the beach to something she did enjoy. Do you want to build a sandcastle? Sure. As long as we do it together. She was still holding onto his arm like she was his girlfriend. Probably. Maybe? He only knew from what he'd seen on TV. We can build a moat. Mei? Yes, Izuku? Is there a reason you're holding on to me so much? Not that he minded. It was actually really, really nice, but there was only so much his heart could take. And he needed clarification? Why was she doing this? Mei normally wasn't this touchy. Sure, she had grabbed his arm and dragged him to the workshop on a daily basis, but this was a slow, deliberate walk where she was hugging his arm. I like your muscles, they're fun to touch. She answered like it was no big deal. And suddenly his workout routine for the foreseeable future was doubled. He needed to do like 50 push-ups right now. She liked his muscles. That was good. Probably, and they were partners. But did that mean that she liked him? Of course she did. They were friends and partners. But, do you want me to stop? Well, that is. His face felt hot, really, really hot. Hotter than anything he'd ever felt. He couldn't feel his arm. Just Mei. I don't mind, it's just, well, that is. His brain wasn't working. It might be hard to build a sandcastle. Like this. Oh, right. She let go in a heartbeat. Her cheeks were rosy and her eyes were still locked onto his. It was always nice being in her crosshairs, but this was something else entirely. How do we start? Do we need to build a foundation? Are there enemies? We should build a catapult to repel enemy assault. She probably could make a working catapult with stuff at the beach. Building a sandcastle with Mei went pretty much how he expected it to go, in that there was a lot of unexpected stuff that really shouldn't surprise him. They went from castle fortified by a moat to a mountain palace, and now, as it was getting close to 5, it was turning into a walking mountain fortress supported by 4 massive legs. The catapult she made with a shovel was also fully functional and could launch a load of red stand up to 10 yards away. Hey Izuku, Mei asked, her tongue sticking out of her mouth. She was etching at the details with a pen. The way she devoted all of herself to a project, no matter how mundane, was something truly amazing. Even if the idea kept constantly evolving before his eyes. "What's up?" If he didn't look directly at her, or her boobs, he could talk normally. And it was really hard not to look at her. It wasn't that she was wearing anything skimpy, it was just more of her skin than he'd ever seen. Her top was more of a sports bra than a bikini, and her bottoms were longer than some shorts he'd seen some other girls wear. And it wasn't anywhere near as skimpy as the bikini that foreign blonde wore. But on May, it just made it difficult not to look at her. He knew he liked May, he knew that she was cute, but where was he going with this again? "Do you like my boobs?" May asked, bouncing up next to them, getting right in his face and bouncing her chest slightly. He couldn't help but look. "What, May?" This was not a question he would ever be ready to answer. What did he say? If he said yes, that would mean he's a pervert. If he said no, then that would be lying. What was worth being, a pervert or a liar? If he said no, she might think he thought she was ugly. What kind of question is that? She shrugged, bouncing her chest at him again. He tried to back away but fell down, and she followed after him, landing on top of him on purpose. She got right in his face again, hands on his biceps. And her boobs were on her chest. They were soft. "You kept looking at them when we were building a sand castle?" Crap, she saw. Why did she seem happy about that? Was it a good thing? "So do you like them?" His head nodded yes against his will. "All right. I have a proposal for you. You get to touch my boobs as much as you want. And I get to touch your muscles as much as I want." There was no way that he was the only one that heard that. The whole beach probably heard that. "What do you say?" "Huh, Izuku?" "May. That's what?" "I couldn't." He really wanted to say yes though, but what would that do to their relationship? Partnership? Whatever ship. He couldn't stop looking her in the eyes. All things considered, it was probably the safest place to look. His refusal only made things worse. She pushed forward, getting close enough to kiss him if she wanted. Or if he wanted. "Oh, come on, Izuku, it's a good deal. It's win-win. Come on, say yes." Instead of words, he started to laugh, then May started to laugh. There wasn't even anything funny, he just had to laugh. His head leaned back and he saw the cause of his laughter. Emmy was using her quirk. "Whoa now," Ms. Joke said, her face resting in her palm. Her entire body deflated. "Settle down, girl, sheesh, now I actually have to be responsible?" So much for unsupervised fun. Nice sand castle though. He had no reason to be nervous, it was just May. He was just spending time with May, doing what they always did, invent, innovate, and inspire. Absolutely nothing had changed between them. Nothing, not even a little bit. She was still doing that cute thing she did whenever they were discussing a plan, where she wrinkled her nose and read the document without so much as moving her head unless she wanted to look at him for his opinion on something. Not that he was paying too much attention to what she was saying, which was something because normally May's enthusiasm over anything would cause him to get over her being too close or his crush. But now everything was different. But it was still exactly the same. May was sitting on the hotel bed with him, the plans for the giant robot in a scattered mess around them, acting like she hadn't offered to trade boob-squeezing rights for muscle-squeezing rights. Worse, that she was still wearing the swimsuit though the shirt was on, so he was being exposed to a generous helping of her pale thighs. His mind was going crazy, engraving these things into his mind, and he was starting to run out of available memory, and he was starting to lose unimportant stuff. Sadly, his nervousness was still there and going strong. "So what did you think, Izuku?" She turned to him and he felt like he was in her crosshairs. Her unblinking focus that he had no problem meeting before was suddenly like staring into the sun. Her thick pink hair still had sand hidden in random pockets so that every time she scratched her head a bit more fell off. But she looked so very soft and touchable and kissable. "And Izuku? We're talking about the rocket punch, right?" He looked back down at the document she had. It was a leg, for lack of any safe place to look. He thought he figured May out, well, better than anybody else could claim to have figured her out. She was smart, had a general sense of good, was kind, and just wanted to invent things. She was creativity and ingenuity given form. But now all that was blown out of the water. Suddenly she likes his muscles, and really wants to touch him whenever they're not working on a project. How was he supposed to deal with that? Was it just physical? Was it more than that? Was it less than that? Was she just curious? May pressed up against him. He could feel the outline of her swimsuit through the shirt, and her general softness through that. Izuku? You're not paying attention. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just my brain is still fried from staying out in the sun for so long and I am yet. Why was he lying? To May. He could trust her. He just needed to be honest about it. Actually, I'm just kind of thinking about what you said earlier. Ms. Joke coughed from her own bed, making sure that they were aware that she was there. She was still dressed in her bikini reading a magazine. A box of the takeout they bought still sat half-eaten next to her. Oh, the muscles thing? May asked, pulling away slightly, a rare frown gracing her lips for just a moment. Then she shrugged and that enthusiastic smile that made his heart melt took its place. Forget about that, we have babies to make. Now come on and focus. I want this to be the best thing we make this year. We should scout out the mechs at the convention tomorrow before the judges meet us. Do you think ours needs to transform? It'd offer more mobility if it could turn into a truck, but I don't have my license and neither do you. Is there a giant robot license? We should ask Power Loader Sensei. Izuku laughed. If only he could just forget what May, then maybe he could stop feeling awkward around her, well, less awkward. If only her rambling was a sign that she was nervous about this too, but it was just May being May. Maybe, do you think we should split up? What? No way. I need you there with me. Especially so you can distract them while I get some Hansen experience. May laughed, her hands twitching as a bit of drool formed in the corner of her mouth. She wiped away the drool and smiled. I can't wait for tomorrow, it's going to be awesome. Psst, Izuku, Emmy shouted, though her voice was raspy like she was trying to whisper to him. She was waving him over with just a finger. See me here. Escaping May was easy, all he had to do was wait for her to start talking, which was always, and then slip away. It was a tactic many of their class had perfected early on in the school year. It was difficult for him because he was often the one she was talking to. He walked over to Emmy's bed, and she motioned him over to the other side so that she was between him and May. What is it, Ms. Joke? Were you bullied in school? She asked, dead serious, her tone flat and eyes unblinking. He must have answered her with his face because she smiled and leaned back into her pillow. Figures, explains why you have zero self-confidence even though you're more kick-ass than any of the kids I teach, and probably the majority of pro heroes. Like really, you and that girl-shaped alien over there have already done more than anybody in your class. You have a successful invention, you're here at this fair, and honestly, Higuri was right when he said that you two were going to change the world someday. I didn't really do a whole. There you go again, you're giving everybody credit but yourself. Yes, that girl is brilliant, but she's such a space case that she's either completely tuned us out or doesn't hear us right now. She threw a thumb over her shoulder towards May, who was still talking about the fair. You're the only person she's at least kind of human with. But you also make her better. Izuku stared at May for a moment, before turning his eyes back to Ms. Joke. The woman was serious as a woman that fought crime by making people laugh could be. At any rate, she was still smiling like she was about to deliver the punchline any moment now. What are you talking about? The smile vanished. Look, I hate romance drama and the whole overplayed and drawn-out lovey angst teen stuff. I've been there, I'm still there. You and Pinky over there are cute together and so into each other, you can't even see it. I want to give her a nice little shove. Instead, she built a rocket, and to keep it from going into escape velocity before you even have your space underwear on, I'm going to give you a punch in the skull. Are you doing a bit right now? My quirk is making people laugh. I'm always doing a bit. She rolled her eyes and tossed back a strand of her green hair before sighing. That's why my love interest never takes me seriously, but that's not your problem. Your problem is that you're too afraid to ask the girl you like if she likes you back, which in case you didn't know is a resounding yes. But she grabbed him by the shoulders, getting as close as May normally got. There was a spark of insanity in her eyes that was not so different from May's. She offered to let you touch her boobs. Girls don't let boys do that if they don't like them. Now go over there. He felt her foot in his stomach as she rolled backward. And grow a pair. For a few seconds, he flew through the air and then crashed down onto the bed, then onto the ground with a thud. I'm going to sneak this beer into the hot springs and be a degenerate. Keep things page 13 in here. Emmy was out the door before he could write himself. So what did Emmy want? May asked. She still hadn't moved since then. She rearranged the papers and offered him a hand up. And are you okay? He took her hand, feeling his blood rush like it was trying to set a record lap around his body. Calluses from long hours of creating things and burning the midnight oil were etched onto those hands of hers, and more than a few scars from a slip here and there. They were the most perfect hands he'd ever seen. Yeah, he stood up, looking her in the eye, still holding onto her hand. I'm fine. She smiled at him and took her hand back. Good, now let's get back to work. We have at least 12 more designs to look through before morning and the convention opens up. May. He drew her attention back to him with but a single word, something that many would consider a feat. He was in her crosshairs now. Was he actually going to do this? Just because some soon-to-be drunk and very bitter lady told him that May liked him? Well, yes. That, and he wanted Emmy to be right. May, do you like me? Yeah, she shrugged, turning back to the blueprints and shrugging. You're my partner after all. Before he knew what he was doing, he ran to the other side of the bed, hands on the blueprints. May looked only slightly annoyed and mostly amused. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? The neutral tone in the way she said that had him feeling like a punch to the gut. His face felt hot, ears too. He was so close to May's face, and this time he was the one doing it. Do you want to be together? We're partners. No, not like partners. He grabbed onto her shoulders in a desperate attempt to keep his sanity in check. It really wasn't working. He knew May had the social skills of a rock, but that was just something he liked about her. He needed to be as blunt as she was. Which took courage he didn't have. I mean, like boyfriend and girlfriend, knees shaking. With dating, lip trembling. Hand holding, stomach in a knot. And dry throat. Kissing? His voice was little more than a squeak. Kiss? May asked, a bit of red on her cheeks. An actual human. Response. Her hand was kneading at his upper arm muscles. He'd never been so glad that he kept up with at least some of All Might's routine. Do I like you enough to kiss you? Is that what you're asking? He nodded. I don't know. May blinked at him, her lips twisted into a smile that sent a shiver up his spine. But we can find out. XXXX. Subject. Izuku Midoriya. Quirk. Blushing, fun muscles. Inventor, quirk analysis. Title. Partner. Experiment, lip-to-lip contact. Hypothesis, unknown, possible taste of what subject had for lunch. Result, error, result not found, sudden shutdown, all data lost, rebooting system, initiate second test. Her lips felt like they were on fire, a lot like that time she got poison oak as a kid and it got everywhere. But better, and located solely on her lips, her shoulders where Izuku was touching her felt hot and heavy. Even her face was flushed as she felt her blood rushing to get in on the action. But what action? She stared at Izuku's lips. They were moving, he was talking, but she couldn't hear him over the sound of her blood. What just happened? Was that a kiss? It was frightening and exciting. It was so many more things that ended in NG. But what just happened? Did she like it? She needed to find out. Without a second thought, she leaned in, crashing her lips down onto Izuku's. They were chapped, rough, and felt a lot better than touching his muscles did. Did she like it though? Very much yes. Result. Positive. Additional trials requested. May. She heard Izuku ask. His voice tickled her skin. His face was so close to hers. But it wasn't close enough. She felt his arms around her shoulders, a wonderful weight that pulled her closer to him. She wanted to do that again. More data required. They had a third kiss, this one shorter and more intense than the second. The buzz was still there, that pitter-patter in her heart she got when she made a new baby with Izuku drummed again. And again. And again. They only stopped when they fell off the bed, Izuku landing below her like they had at the beach, but this was different. His hand rested against the small of her back, and she grew to hate the white shirt she had put back on. She looked down at him. He was blushing, stammering and looking at her like she was the most amazing thing ever created. So, if we become boyfriend and girlfriend, does that mean that we can do that a lot more? He nodded. And I can touch your muscles all I want? He nodded, eyes wide. Congratulations, Izuku. You're my boyfriend. This is not negotiable. Now kiss me one more time and let's get back to working on this robot. XXXX. If that girl got pregnant, it was so not her fault. All she did was give them a little nudge. Sure, shipping her students was probably not the most ethical of hobbies, and a lot of them winked out faster than a shooting star. But, well, she really didn't have an excuse. She blamed Shota. There was only so much rejection a girl could take before she snapped. Regardless of the fact that she totally did the exact same thing in school. When she returned after an hour of drinking in the hot spring, she expected many things, to walking into them doing it, to them sitting on different beds, for them not to be there. Though mostly she was hoping for a tied-up eraser head with a note that said thank you. That was why when she entered the room and saw Izuku and Mei cuddling as they went over some blueprints, she couldn't help but give herself a high five. So, I take it things worked out? She asked, bouncing onto her bed. Mei gave her a thumbs up before her hand went back to work touching Izuku's chest. Well, alright then. Mission accomplished. Now, what the hell was she going to do for the next week? Alright. She was in Okinawa at the National Gadgets Fair. Hey, don't touch that. I'm not touching it, I'm making it better. No matter how their relationship changed, Mei would still be Mei. Even if the world were to end tomorrow, she'd still be the same spazoid genius he couldn't get out off his head, riding a rocket ship she built out of scrap. He really shouldn't have been surprised when she got distracted at every project they passed by. It was the second day of the National Gadget Fair and their Catchem ball had been awarded the First Timers Award, the Practicality Award, some blue ribbon, and a variety of other rewards that basically meant that he and Mei got to go to their pick of college tuition paid in full and several gadget-based hero agencies offering them positions once they graduate. Or tomorrow. Eventually, it will sink in that he pretty much had his life set because he failed All Might's test. He might not be able to save people directly as well as a pro hero could, but he could help every pro hero do their job safely. The Catchem ball already improved the success rate and lowered chance of injury by 20%. Still, there was more he could do. He watched Mei run around with a wrench and a screwdriver in her hand as she tried to disassemble the giant robot someone had brought. It was just one among many that lined the section aptly dubbed Robot Way. Correction, there was a lot more that they could do. Young man. A man with a giant beak-like nose ran up to him. He had on a lab coat and looked to be well into his 20s. His name tag read Thurwiley. Could you please control your girlfriend? She's going to break something. I'm making it better. Mei chimed, hanging from the robot's shoulders and unscrewing a panel. It popped off, slamming into the wall a foot behind it. Mei slithered in, giggling all the way. I can't wait to see what kind of. The giggling came to a stop. What gives? Where's the engine? There's nothing in here. Izuku. They're fakes. Dr. Wily turned red. I told you not to go in there. A Santa-like laughter came from the other side of the row, where a plump man with a round belly and equally round nose laughed, standing next to a human-sized robot with all the majority of the inner workings exposed. I dare say, Albert, you showed up without a working project? Again? Gwahohoho. Silence. Light, you fool. The engine was far too powerful. I left it out for the safety of those around us, in case some young idiot decided to mess with my machine. Albert growled, stomping over to his robot, rolling up his sleeves. Get out of there, you stupid village girl. Oh, did it explode? There's a lot of burn marks in here. Oh hey, the arms are hollow too, Mei's voice echoed from inside the chassis. No wonder you need a powerful engine. The feet are filled with lead. That's a lot of extra weight. Was it supposed to be for balance? Or weight for kicking? 'Cause there's no way these joints can support that kind of momentum. The robot's head moved and popped off like a light bulb. A second later, Mei emerged from the newly made hole and walked over to him like nothing had happened. Well, that was pointless. Correction, my dear. The portly man with a lab coat that read Dr. Light on it walked up to them smiling. Dr. Light. He had heard that name somewhere. That was brilliant. I can see that when it comes to robotics you're no slouch. I'm Dr. Thomas Light. Oh, here, let me give you my card. I knew I made those things for a reason. The man began to dig into his pockets, nuts and bolts falling and more than a few tools as well. Until at long last he pulled out a metallic L, With the flick of his wrist, the card activated, showing a bunch of details. Here you go, my dear. Mei looked at the hologram for just a moment, then lost interest and handed the card to Izuku. That's neat, I guess. Mei took his hand, tangling their fingers together like it was no big deal to be holding hands in public. At least she hadn't tried to kiss him in public yet. Let's go see the next one. She paused, the color draining from her face, and her body went limp. Only his grip on her kept her from falling to the ground. I forgot to eat. I'm sorry, Dr. Light, but I think Mei needs a break before she collapses again. Izuku tried to laugh, but all that came out was a nervous chuckle. He pulled Mei up and wrapped her arm around his shoulder. At this point, she was just being overly dramatic and her boob pressed against his side. Dr. Light laughed. Nonsense, my boy, you do as you must, but if you ever want to talk, that little card you have doubles as a communicator. I'll be keeping an eye on you and Mei. Not many first years are as talented as you two are. Now off with you before Wily manages to get himself unstuck. True enough, the scientist that Mei had upset, which was pretty much everyone, had his legs sticking out of the robot at odd angles. Thank you again, Dr. Light. With a grunt, he had Mei on his back, arms draped around his neck and her face squished against his shoulder. He could feel her boobs on his back. It was a nice feeling. You really need to remember to eat more, Mei, he muttered, passing through the door towards the closest place that sold food. She stirred, her arms tightening around his chest as her hand groped his chest muscle. That's your job, isn't it? You're supposed to take care of me as your girlfriend, right? That's what the magazine said. I don't think that's how it works, Mei. He honestly had no idea how this was supposed to work, but his heart hadn't stopped pounding in his chest since they became a couple. But you're good at remembering all the stuff I forget, like eating, sleeping, and all that other stuff. Besides, Ms. Joke said you're supposed to spoil me, right? She mumbled, her breath hot in his ear and sending a shiver down his spine. I'm not being too selfish, am I? I also read that guys don't like it when girls are being selfish, but they also like it when you're needy. I'm confused. He laughed, bouncing her back up onto his back because her butt was slipping. Mei, when did you read all this stuff? It sounds terrible, just keep being you. You're the one I like. But I want to be a good girlfriend. You're the best girlfriend, just keep doing what you do best, being Mei. Does that mean I'm allowed to forget to eat more often because I really like riding on your back like this? Her lips touched his ear. He was having a really difficult time trying to think of reasons to say no to that request. You, don't have to starve yourself for me to carry you like this. Just ask next time. He could feel her smile. Okay. Everything was fine. He had more than enough reason for his mother to be happy for him. First prize, more ribbons than she could put on a wall, college scholarships, career choices, even the calling card of one of the foremost robotics experts in the world. Hopefully, all of that would mean that she wouldn't freak out about the fact that Mei was now his girlfriend. His mom sat flabbergasted at all the prizes he brought home, tears running down her face. Izuku, I'm so proud of you. Look at all this. A full college scholarship? Job offers? This is amazing. I knew you would do amazing things even if you couldn't be a hero. That didn't sting as much as it used to. Oh, and congratulations to you as well, Mei. Thank you for helping to bring out Izuku's talents. Inko stood and bowed at the waist. Then she shot back up, wiping the tears from her face. Oh, I know. We should go out to celebrate. Where would you like to eat? How does yakisoba sound? Oh, that sounds good. Mei cheered from behind him. All right, let me get my jacket and wheel. Wait, Mom, there's one more thing I need to tell you. So you might want to take a seat. Or should she be standing for this? How was he supposed to tell his mom? Maybe he should just not tell her? How long could he keep it a secret, though? Would it be worse if he did? Would Mei be okay with their relationship being secret? Did she even know how to do that? Maybe if he explained it as, Izuku's my boyfriend now, Mei said. Loudly. I get to touch his muscles and he gets to touch my boobs. He looked at Mei, then at Mei's boobs, then back at his mother who was doing the same, her mouth wide open. This was probably the worst way to go about it. She stood, grabbing him by the shoulder. Izuku, how could you? I thought you said it wasn't like that. You're going to leave me? Inko spun, giving Mei a deep bow at the waist. Thank you for taking care of my son. How could you do this to me, Izuku? You're far too young. She shook him back and forth and then looked back at Mei, all smiles and sunshine. You really are a lovely girl. I'm sure that Izuku must make you happy. Then she was shaking him again. You can't leave me all alone. She let go and turned back to Mei, grabbing her hand softly. You're such a beautiful young girl. However, did my son manage to catch a cute girl such as yourself? He's really smart and has big muscles. Mei didn't so much as blink as she spoke, her face uncomfortably close to his mother's, who didn't even blink. He's also my partner. So I'll be with him for a long time. Oh my, does that mean you plan on marrying my son? Inko asked, all signs of panic gone from her face. Mom? He asked, his mouth still hanging open. This was probably the worst it could have gone. Now his mom was going to think he was a pervert, which meant that being embarrassed would be his normal emotion at home. But still, what did Mei think? She wasn't blushing, just staring at him with that smile she often had on her face. Yes, that would be for the best. Mei nodded. Did she just agree to marry him? The general reaction to people finding out about their relationship was mixed. Most of his friends from the hero course congratulated him, saying that they'd make a cute couple. Even Kachin gave a happy grunt when a few of the bubbly girls asked what he thought about it. It was his own class that was a bit divided, but no one was really negative. Half were surprised that Mei had a sex drive, the other half offered him their condolences. It was Higuro Sensei that had the weirdest reaction. Gah, now I have to redo the rooms because of this. Or not. It wasn't until a week later, when the dorm rooms were announced, did Izuku understand that comment. And apparently Higuro Sensei decided that the benefits of having Mei's room right next to his outweighed the possible risks. That, and they were guaranteed on the bottom floor with a storage room buffering them from the rest of the class. Higuro Sensei? He asked, chasing after the diminutive man as he made for the door. Are you sure about these room arrangements? I mean, shouldn't the school be trying to reduce? Power Loader turned to him, a breath of air escaping from his mouth like the breath of a dragon. Izuku, I discussed this with the principal and several other teachers, as well as Mei's parents. I admit it's a fair bit of laziness when it comes to this, but you being so close to Mei ensures that she'll be well managed. Besides, Higuro Sensei gave a dry laugh and pointed towards his room. Mei was holding some kind of that was the precision hole maker that they had made a few months ago. What was sheesh? This way we'll only have to worry about one wall being damaged and not some elaborate rat maze. Mei! Izuku shouted at her, but she just smiled and carried on. 15 seconds later, a crash followed by a plume of concrete came from Mei's room, and his crazy insane girlfriend came walking out covered in dust, coughing up a storm. You both have a bright future in this world. Higuro placed his hand on his shoulder. Together I can't fathom the heights you'll reach, but make sure that she gets there all right. A slap on the back and a cold laugh. Also, it's easier this way because once she finds out that the curfew is to be on campus by 10 and nothing about being in bed, she'll probably try to live in the workshop. I heard that. Mei shouted, running over him and all but smother his arm with her body. He was in her crosshairs once again, a giant toothy smile on her face. Come on, Izuku. We can unpack stuff later. Also, don't worry about the concrete, we can take care of that later. But let's go to the workshop. Well, apparently he had said goodbye to a full night's rest without even knowing it. XXXX. What's that smell? Izuku asked. The cooling was off by 0.4 degrees per second, meaning that if the device were to run at optimum strength, the temperature difference would result in a catastrophic failure, which meant it would explode. Exploding wasn't always bad. Sometimes it was good, when a thing exploded so long as it was supposed to explode. This was not one of those things. Besides, a minute detonation time was horrible and a waste of potential energy. Mei? There's no way that she could, Izuku said again, before he gaped. What was he doing? Oh, he was close, that was good. Mei? When was that last time you showered? Don't know. Well, she did, but it was too much work to explain. Besides, they had more important stuff to do. She turned to Izuku and offered him the cooling unit. What do you think about this? How can we improve the cooling? It just needs a 5% increase. But wait, If we can get 10% more, then we can increase power output by 28%. That'd mean we'd. May. Izuku slammed his hand on the table, finally getting her to look at him. He was pinching his nose. Well, that explained why he sounded kind of funny. Honestly, she thought that was just the lack of sleep. But it wasn't. That meant that she was still good for a few more hours. Probably. Oh wait, Izuku was talking again. Look at you, you're covered in grease. That was actually normal. You smell like you haven't showered in a week. He wasn't too far off. And everybody else is avoiding you more than normal. May looked up for the first time in a long time. Her usual work area had increased by a whole 1 desk radius. This was great. Awesome. We can start building our mechanical monstrosity for the fair. Oh hey, we should get the rock guy and see how far we can throw him using a hydraulic arm. Izuku sighed. His hair looked really soft and floppy. She wanted to touch it. Why wasn't she? Oh right, that weird no-touching rule he had when other people were around. Who cared if they saw her grope his muscles? They were fun to touch. And kissing. She could really go for kissing. With lots of muscle and hair touching. Then she'd be fully charged and hopefully be able to figure out this cooling issue. May, are you listening to me? Sorry, I was distracted by your hair. What did you say? Good girlfriends listen to their boyfriend. Also communicated. At least that's what the magazine said. Oh, it also said that boyfriends appreciated compliments. It's just so floppy and soft looking. I want to touch it. May, I'm serious, you need to go take a bath or a shower. Nope. Too much stuff to do. They only had 3 weeks left before the school fair. And their baby had so much more work to do. A nice giant robot. It was going to be huge. They had to figure out what additions to include by building and see what worked. And to determine its purpose. Sure, a giant mech was awesome, but oh wait. You said bath, right? That's perfect. Thank God. Someone said loud enough for her to hear. Or care about hearing. It wasn't Izuku or Higura's Sensei, so it didn't matter. We can make it a fire rescue bot. It can carry water in its systems and we can blast it out of the hands and fingers depending on the strength. Oh, and it can break down walls and act as structural support if needed. Now all we need to do is figure out how to not make it explode. She was rambling. Was it rambling? Was she supposed to know when she was doing that? Oh right, she was always rambling. So was Izuku, but they understood each other's ramblings. Which was why they worked so good together. That and muscles. And hair. And kissing. And just all of him. Oh, right, giant robot. Pass me the wrench. I can probably get started on the engine. We're going to need a lot of. May. Why do you keep interrupting me? That's rude, you know. Seriously, and be called her socially inept. The nerve of some people. Even if it was her boyfriend. Go take a bath, you smell bad and you're dirty. There was still some parts of her that weren't covered in grease and oil. I'll do that later. Robot time now, besides I do that stuff before I go to bed. Izuku sighed again. Oh, she was doing that thing again. What did Higura's Sensei call it? Oh right, testing patience or something like that. And let me guess, you haven't slept in a while. What kind of boyfriend doesn't know when his girlfriend goes asleep? Our rooms are even joined. Well, kind of, it was more a waist-high hole in the wall covered by half a door that had an alarm on it if she opened it past 10 p.m. She wasn't even in her room that early. Wait, when was the last time she was in her room? Did she leave food in there? Wait, that wasn't important. May, go take a bath and get some sleep before I make you. Izuku put his foot down, hands on his hips, which made his muscles bulge along his upper arm. Those were her favorite muscles. Well, maybe it was a cross between those and the ones on his chest. Pass. Now hand me it. Oh, the floor and the wall switched places. And Izuku's arm was around her waist. What happened to his no touching in front of other people rule? Was that just her rule? Was he going to start touching her boobs right now? Oh, wait, why was she on his shoulders staring down at his butt? She should touch his butt. It was a muscle, right? Why didn't she think of this before? Also, why didn't her feet feel the ground anymore? Oh, Izuku was carrying her. Away from her workstation. Hey, wait. I wasn't done. I warned you. Izuku laughed as he charged out the door, carrying her like she was a sack of potatoes. This is what you get for not taking care of yourself. I'm still eating food. Wait, when was the last time she ate? Izuku, put me down. I need to work on our babies. You need to wash and sleep. This is spousal abuse. Leaving you there would have been spousal neglect. He had a point. And struggle as she might, she didn't have quite enough energy to shake free from Izuku's iron grasp. Damn it. Why'd he have to have such nice muscles? In no time at all he took her to the dorm rooms and had her standing in front of the girls' washroom. Just because you brought me here doesn't mean I'll wash. May, stop being crazy. A good night's rest and being clean will help you work better, you know this? Izuku laughed, slowly nudging her towards the bath. That's true, but it's also an inefficient use of time, and while the burst of productivity is good, I ultimately lose out. I have a graph. In my room I can show you. I can make it until tonight, no problem. I can even postpone it until tomorrow if you bring me some coffee. Wait, better idea. I'll go get you coffee. Clearly you're sleep deprived. Her attempt at escaping came to a dead halt as she felt his hand around her wrist. Damn it, why'd she have to give such a caring guy permission to look over her? And a diligent one. She functioned just fine as a degenerate. May, I'm not leaving until you take a shower. Her boyfriend, who was supposed to make her happy, but was really making her really grumpy right now, said firmly. May growled and pulled her favorite tactic of dead weight. It didn't work. Instead, her face hovered a few inches just above the ground as Izuku's grip remained firm. She didn't want to go to bed. Maybe she could seduce Izuku into letting her work more. Or wear him out until he fell asleep, then she could sneak off and go back to work. Huzzah! Genius. But how would she do that? She gasped as the idea hit her. Izuku had a hard time speaking to her boobs, even when they were covered. Apparently naked boobs would have a greater effect. Fine. I'll take a bath. But you have to wash me. He stuttered. That was good. His face was red. That was also good. He was still stuttering. Very, very good. May. I can't do that. It's the girl's bath. Besides you. What's the matter, Izuku? She laughed, using his arm to pull herself back up and pressing her chest against his. Was it a dirty move? Did it work? Also yes. Are you afraid? Everyone else is in class. Wait, are we cutting right now? Higura's Sensei said to do something about you. Damn traitor. Then we're fine, no one will be in there. Besides, it's the only way I'll get clean. She smiled, moving in close and wrapping her arms around him. More stuttering. This was great news. Otherwise you can put me in there, but I'll just escape and go back to the workshop. Izuku groaned, stomped his feet, and cried. May, you smell so bad. Look at it this way, you get to wash my boobs. Which means touching them without any clothes in the way. She pressed her breasts up against him again. This time it had an effect. It'd be you first time seeing them without clothes on, right? Fine, I'll wash you, but you're going right to bed after this, okay? Izuku caved. Whatever form of self-control he might have had couldn't stand up to the awesome might of her boobs. Yes, sure, whatever you say. She grabbed hold of his arm, putting on her most energetic smile, and lead him into the bathroom. Her face felt hot, but that was just because of the lack of sleep. Probably. Her heart was also beating faster, which was weird. Maybe she was excited about getting away from Izuku. Now come on, if you don't want to get caught you'll have to wash me fast. The fact that he was standing in the girl's bath was not lost on him. It was just placed under storage to freak out about later when he was trying to get some sleep later, as his mind was currently being occupied by his girlfriend. His crazy, spazoid, oddball girlfriend that did amazing things without even thinking. More specifically about how blunt she was, there was no hidden side to May, no dark past to dredge up, no excuse for her being the way she was. She just was. And she was very naked right now, unless he counted the numerous grease and dirt stains that were covering her body, which he didn't. As always, she walked in front of him like she didn't know shame. Instead, he felt all of the shame and embarrassment she should be feeling and added it to his own. He chose the wrong girl to fall in love with. Or the right one. May had always been cute, then as his crush grew she became beautiful, and now standing naked in front of him with her chest held high and her eyes still wide open like she had an IV drip of coffee going right into her blood, he couldn't even imagine anyone looking so good. Somehow the grease stains looked like they belonged on her. She gave a yawn, stretching in front of him, showing off her large bouncy breasts that were topped off with soft nipples the size of a pencil eraser. Her waist was narrow and her hips were wide. If it wasn't for her eccentric personality, she'd easily be one of the most popular girls in the school. But that wasn't why he loved her, it was just a really nice bonus. All right. She pumped her arms, smiling at him, then spun towards the wash area of the bath. Her fluffy pink hair was flat against her back with the amount of sweat it was holding. He had a sexy and gross girlfriend. When she walked, her chest was held high and her hips swayed. It was really hard not to notice those powerful back and upper arm muscles she had earned through countless inventions. Out of everything, it was perhaps those muscles that called to him the most. That and her breasts. Come on, Izuku, the sooner you wash me, the sooner I go to bed, which means I can wake up sooner and get right back to work. Mei plopped down onto a stool with her back facing him. Her breasts were visible whenever she lifted up her arms. Oh wait, he was supposed to be washing her and scolding her for her inability to clean herself up. Something about not being wiped. But it was hard to complain about it considering how he was currently seeing Mei's naked body and was about to touch it. All of it. Sure, he had squeezed her boob before, but there was clothing in the way. This was on a whole nother level. Right, he could do this. It was just a naked body, and he had been washing himself for years. It was just like that. Except not at all. This was a girl's body. A naked, beautiful girl's body. His naked girlfriend's body. His incredibly beautiful and hot girlfriend's filthy body that was just sitting there on a stool like it was no big deal that she was actually naked in front of him. Izuku, she whined, leaning backwards to look at him, her smile undiminished. Hurry up, it's cold, damp, and boring over here. Right? He grabbed the towel and tried his best to walk with his head held high and maintaining eye contact. It helped that Mei's eyes drew him and held him there. Most of the time. He poured the hot water and added the soap as Mei sat there bouncing on the stool like she wasn't sleep-deprived. It was honestly impressive. She had to be drinking coffee, but she hated bitter things, so maybe a pill or something. Or maybe she was just batshit crazy and he was just now realizing it despite the fact that everybody had been telling him that since day one. He placed the wet towel onto her back and began to rub her. Mei gave a soft, barely noticeable groan. But she was so worth it. You should learn to do massages. Mei gave a soft moan as he began to rub circles into her back. Her hair was damp with sweat and gave off a smell like rotten onions and cheese. I bet you'd be super good at it. He grabbed the hose and sprayed her on the head, earning a quick scream from her. This was as exciting and arousing as it was gross. Actually, it was only kind of gross, but mostly really hot. Why do you let yourself get so dirty? She laughed, embracing the water, spraying her in the back of her head. I forget, but now I'll remember that if I get super dirty you'll wash me. He turned on the cold water, aiming for just above her butt. Izuku. I was kidding, bring back the warm. I was kidding. Mostly. Stuff. It's cold. You're making me more awake. Mei, I don't mind doing stuff like this with you. He turned the water back to a slow, warm flow that flowed down Mei's back. He grabbed her arm, running the soapy cloth along it and watching the grime wash away. But this is just crazy and not the good kind. You have grime all over, there's grease in places there shouldn't be grease, and you have oil on your cheek. He was barely aware of how close he had gotten to her face as he washed along her arm, until she kissed him. It was soft, warm, and made all of his grievances vanish into thin air, well, aside from the fact that she still smelled kind of bad. This was the power she had over him. A simple kiss was enough to make him forget main things, even if they weren't exactly good at it. Thank you, Izuku, she laughed, pressing her forehead up against his. Her eyes were closed. How did she get a black stain on her eyelid? And she sighed into a smile, leaning onto him more with each passing moment. She must be really tired. She blinked at him with half-lidded eyes and licked her lips. You deserve a reward. Yep, she was very tired. He would have rolled his eyes had they not been glued onto her grease-stained breasts that were moving with each subtle motion. That was reward enough from his very sleepy girlfriend. Besides, the kiss was good. I just want you to take care of yourself a bit better. But I like it when you do that stuff for me. She laughed, trying to kiss him. The adrenaline of making new babies must be wearing off. As much as he enjoyed the experience, Mei truly loved it. almost like she lived for it, made him feel special every time she willingly left her project for him. Though there were plenty of times where he had to drag her away. She gave a mighty yawn and fell into him. It makes me feel special and happy. That makes me happy, May, but just hold on a bit longer, okay? I'll try to clean you as fast as I can, then you can sleep, okay? He swallowed and moved his toweled hand around to her stomach and breasts. He only felt a little bad that he was enjoying this while all but taking advantage of May. She pouted and tried to kiss him again. It was half-hearted. No, I'm supposed to seduce you, then we have sex and you waste all your energy so I can sneak out and go back to work? She paused. Wait, pretend you didn't hear that. My mouth isn't working right now. I blame your kisses. And muscles? His mind came to a dead halt as he was in the middle of scrubbing the grim free of May's boobs, though his fingers did manage to twitch into her softness. Were you trying to bribe me with sex? No. She drew the vowel out as long as she could until it became a soft whisper, her head lulled to the side and her eyes were shut. I just wanted to wear you out and then go back to work. No bribing, that'd be bad. Like you with those chocolates. And muscles? The chocolates made him feel like he was training a dog. So come on, you want to do it? She laughed, nodding off for just a moment before springing back up with more energy than before, only for it to vanish. It'll be fun and stuff. No, I like you too much to take advantage of you like that. Besides, he'd need protection, and a better time and place than in the dorms, though knowing May she'd probably think doing it in the workshop was the romantic place. And fantastic, now the imagine of them having sex on top of their robot was burned into his mind. May whined, moving her head to kiss him on the cheek and the neck. It was a lazy kiss, little more than pecks. But it'll be fun, don't you want to have fun? I read sex feels good. Besides, I think I have the cleanest boobs in school right now. You can touch them more. She was right, he had been cleaning her boobs for a while now. Her nipples were erect as well, and she had a light blush on her face. He needed to finish this before his willpower vanished. Ask me after you wake up. He muttered, moving the towel down along her legs. She was almost clean. Just a little bit. Oh, so that's what a vagina looked like. XXXX. You're such a good boyfriend. May mumbled into his shoulder, burying her head deeper into his neck. Her arms were wrapped tight around his neck. His arms were hooked around May's legs and her back as he navigated the hallway towards her bedroom. Once he put her to sleep, he should go back to class, or at least let Higuro Sensei know that she was in bed. She shuddered, squeezing him tighter. You're so warm. If you were naked you could make me warmer. He rolled his eyes and rounded the corner. May's door was in sight. It had yellow caution tape on it, a joke that some of his classmates did, one that May didn't seem to mind in the slightest. You're not cold, if anything you're warm. I'm sorry, I'm being annoying, aren't I? This is your fault, I don't want to sleep. She kissed at his neck enough to make him veer off course ever so slightly. I just want to be with you making babies and talking about stuff. You're so annoying and nice, and I love you. That made him stop. That was the first time May had said that. That was the first time either of them had said that. His throat went dry. It was probably just nothing. May was a logical, well, her own unique brand of logic, person. It was one of the things he loved about her. Love? That's what I said, she mumbled, her arm going slack around his neck. She must have finally passed out. He wanted to wake her, to try and get the meaning behind what she said out into the open. But May was blunt. She meant the things that she said, even if it wasn't something that could be understood, she probably meant it. Still, wasn't this going too fast? Once she found out that he liked her as more than a partner, she built a rocket onto their relationship. His own mother thought they were engaged. So maybe she did mean it. Neat, his girlfriend loved him. But she fell asleep before he could tell her back. Some things can wait until she wakes up. His smile was undeniable at this point. His girlfriend was a pain in the butt, but she was certainly worth it. May's room was cleaner than most people would have thought. The bed was pushed to the side and various posters of mecha anime, schematics, and steampunk artwork covered the walls like a collage of May's brain. A large art book sat next to her bed on top of the alarm clock, and a box bursting with rolled-up papers that were her scattered ideas sat within arm's reach. Her computer desk took up most of the other wall, with a fair amount of that space being taken up by a pile of dishes and construction paper. The only real mess was around the hamper that had a pile of her usual tank tops, skirts, and various underwear haphazardly tossed to the side. It wasn't even his doing. Despite her workshop and bodily tendencies, May kept her room fairly clean as he did at any rate. With a sigh, he adjusted her weight so that he could place her under the covers of her bed. She grunted and crawled in without much of a fuss. "Good night, May." He kissed her forehead. "I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Then we can work on lots and lots of babies." He turned to leave, but was stopped when May pulled on his arm. She was looking at him with those yellow crosshair eyes in a way he had seen a few times. She wanted something but didn't know how to say it. "Stay. But you need to sleep." "I know," she mumbled, pushing her head further under the covers so that her mouth was hidden. "But I want you here. Please? Lay next to me? I want to keep touching you." She was begging. She never begged. She swindled and dealed, but never begged. He sighed and smiled. "Sure, but I'm leaving once you fall asleep, okay?" "That's fine." She opened up the covers and he slid in. The moment he did, she wrapped herself around him and gave a happy sigh. "I mean it. I don't want to live without you, Izuku. Stay with me forever and ever. Let's make lots of super awesome babies." "I love you, May," he muttered, kissing her forehead, patting the back of her head. "That's good," she mumbled. "You don't really have a choice, though." She was out like a light in 5 minutes, and he was out in 30 minutes. Something was off. May stood in the middle of the common hall, frozen mid-stride. All of the other students were already heading out the door, a few pausing to give her their usual weird looks. But the only one that mattered to her wasn't there. By this point he'd have run up to her, be awkward for a second until she took his hand because he was weird like that and needed to remember that touching her was okay. More than okay, really. Where was Izuku? She looked around the room, no sign of her hunky green-haired boyfriend. Maybe he was late? She should wait. Girlfriends did that, right? Boyfriends did, so should girlfriends. Made sense to her. Besides, morning classes were language classes and she spent most of her time daydreaming about new babies and Izuku. 3 seconds was long enough. She took 2 more steps, then stopped. She should check on him. She walked towards Izuku's door and reached for the handle. Wait, shouldn't she knock? Did girlfriends knock? Did she knock? No, she really didn't. If he wanted privacy, he'd lock it. Besides, she was his girlfriend. That meant she could do things that other people couldn't. Touch him. What if he was still changing? She opened the door. That was a risk she was willing to take. She was disappointed by the lack of Izuku in various states of undress. Instead, all she was greeted by was a dark room with just a tad bit too much all-might merchandise to be tasteful. Fortunately, there was an Izuku-shaped lump on the bed. Did he miss his alarm? He never missed his alarm. "Izuku," she purred, dropping her bag near his door as she shut it tightly behind them. "Are you asleep, Izuku?" She was about to get onto his bed and wake him up with kisses and lots of muscle touches, but was stopped by the various tissues and bottle of NyQuil that littered Izuku's bed. Are you sick? May?" Izuku groaned, sitting up. Yep, he was sick. He had the whole snotty nose thing and red puffy eyes. He was also pale. He blinked, inhaling a healthy amount of snot before wiping his nose with a used tissue. "I'm a little sick today. Can you turn in my homework? It's on the desk." He didn't wait for her to respond before falling back into his blankets. Her boyfriend was sick. That meant it was time to test her boyfriend is sick skills. Let's see what was the first he sick people needed. Alright, soup. She should get him soup. What kind of soup do you like? Do you want a sponge bath? Do you have a fever? Is it just a cold? Do you feel like vomiting? May. He groaned from the bed. Go to class. Oh, wait, I know. Let me keep you warm with my body. May. He flipped the cover off, revealing his shirtless chest. Muscles. And snot. He looked tired. It's just a head cold, I'm fine. Go to class unless you want to get sick too? That's a risk I'm willing to take to comfort you in your time of need. Being sick meant that she didn't have to go to class. She could stay in the workshop all day and work on all the babies, and when they kicked her out of that, she could sit in her room and work on blueprints all day. The only downside, she was sick, but that was minor. I'll be fine. Go to class. He pulled the covers back over him, this time swallowing up his head. Can't I get a kiss first? Go to class. But it's boring without you. It was the truth. Classes without Izuku sucked. How was she going to survive? She could already feel her brain rotting from the mind-numbingly boring stuff. He didn't say anything for a long time. He might have fallen asleep. Can I bring you soup or something during lunch? You're always taking care of me, now it's my turn. She wasn't going to leave until he said yes to that. Izuku groaned, miso soup please. XXXX. Classes were boring. Very, very boring. How did Izuku pay attention to these things? Honestly, her notes didn't make any sense. What the hell did the discovery of America have to do with building a new baby? All she could think about was how to make a better boat that could make the trip in a few hours because it could fly. She should build a boat. The flying boat. One with a compass so she wouldn't accidentally discover a long-lost civilization or something. That'd just get in the way of making more babies. Oh, wait, they should build a spaceship, then build a space station where her and Izuku can make babies forever and ever. And have zero-G sex. That thought came out of nowhere. May. Then again, she had been thinking about it ever since she tried to seduce him like a week ago into letting her stay up a few more hours. It felt good having Izuku wash her like that. Did he say he'd do that again? It was fun. Maybe she should not shower for a while and make him do it again? No, that'd be what was the word? Manipulative? Yes, that one. She should just be honest with Izuku, then he'd blush and stammer and then agree when she asked again. It was perfect. And she could wash his muscles. Double perfect. How would bathing work in space? Would the water just float there? Sponges probably. That didn't sound sexy. She should make a gravity-generating device. What was that girl's name that had a gravity quirk? Izuku would know. She should look in his journal and find a way to science this shit up. May. What? She turned to look at Higuro-sensei, who was really close, and she could hear his teeth grinding. That wasn't a good sign. It meant he was mad. He did that often in her general direction. He should really see an anger management person about that. He flopped a stack of papers on her desk. After class, please take these to Izuku, they're his homework and a few notes. Power Loader tapped the stack of papers with a giant metallic finger. And wish him a speedy recovery. Sadly, Recovery Girl prefers to let students get over illnesses on their own. Right away, Sensei. She grabbed the stack of papers and was out the door. She needed to get soup first. Lunch was in 30 minutes, but if she asked real nice, they'd probably let her get some early. Had some. I told you after class. She ignored that. XXXX. She barged into Izuku's room, carrying 2 bowls of soup, a bunch of bread, some medicine, a few comic books, and her notebooks. Just because Izuku was sick didn't mean she couldn't hang out with him and get a bunch of good designs out of him. Besides, he's slept for like 12 hours now. That was more than enough rest. Izuku, she said cheerfully. He was still in bed but got up to look at her. I brought you food and medicine and homework. We can ignore that though. Oh, and a comic book too. It was updated. I think this is the issue where they fight the giant dragon thing. Also, I have an idea about a device that can manipulate gravity. Wasn't there someone that had a quirk like that? He sat up, snorted a wad of snot and stared at her for a moment. Muscles. He smacked his lips and blinked twice. What? I said. May, I normally love listening to you. You know that, but right now it feels like my head is swimming in a bowl of pain, so take it easy on me, all right? He gave a lopsided smile with his chapped lips. He was sick and gross, but also kind of cute. She wanted to cuddle with him until he wasn't so miserable. Oh, right? Well, how are you feeling? She sat down her notebooks on Izuku's desk, and oh hey, there was her bag this morning. Good thing she didn't need it. He looked at the sealed bowl of soup that the kitchen had given her. Mostly to stop her from messing with their equipment, and partly because she and Izuku built some of their equipment. Hungry? Right? Do you want me to feed you? She cracked open one of the bowls and her mouth was watering in seconds. She should have gotten more. But that's what the bread was for. Bread was good for colds, right? No. He shook his head and held out his arms for the bowl. I think I can manage that much. Besides, shouldn't you get back to class? Nope. Higuro-sensei told me to come here. Technically not a lie. She'd deal with the consequences later. Or not. They did make Higuro-sensei's non-teaching job a lot easier. And slightly explodey. Maybe she should try to make something that would help Izuku be less sick? Like an automatic soup machine. Wait, that sounded messy, and not the fun kind of messy that was oil, grease, and sweat, but the gross kind that was food-based. Except for chocolate. Chocolate was never gross. Oh, that's nice of him. Izuku mumbled. Take the bowl from her. He didn't even wait for the spoon and started sipping at the thick miso soup. This is great, thank you, May. Glad to hear it. I also got you some head cold stuff, some Dayquil, some NyQuil, and bread. Bread? Bread. She held a loaf out to him. He stared at it with one eyebrow raised. I'm sorry, the loaf fell onto her lap. I don't really know how to take care of you when you're sick. You're doing a great job, May. He slurped more soup and gave a long, content sigh. Thanks for taking care of me. If I'm better by this weekend, do you want to go somewhere? Oh, they could go to the movies to see that new anime with steampunk stuff or see a giant mecha anime. Oh, or go to the hardware store and pick up a new set of tools. Muscles. She stared at Izuku's bare chest for a moment and smiled. Let's go to a private hot spring. Isn't that a bit expensive? I was planning on doing that for graduation. He snorted, more snot, one eye slightly more open than other as he gave a long yawn. Why don't we go to the movies or the beach? He probably meant beach. Do you really want to wait until we graduate to have sex? He blinked at her. I think I'm a little too sick. Can you repeat that? Do you really want to wait until we graduate to have sex? He looked at her for a long time before he took one last sip of the soup, finishing it off. You're crazy and I love you. Oh, I know. So, your new gloves should eliminate a lot of the recoil that you had previously. Additionally, I made the primary nozzle able to fire several different bullets that range from beanbags to a quick cement solution that your blasts can get rid of quickly, so little worry of you getting stuck. Izuku smiled, shoulders back as he looked at his childhood friend standing in his official hero uniform. The design was by Higura Sensei, but the tech and gear was all him and Mei. That was true for most of the Soon-Tobe heroes in UA. Kacchan looked at the glove, his usual scowl in its place before he shoved his hand into it and then began to make his usual explosions. Not bad, you damn nerd. That was Kacchan 4 and you did great, thanks Izuku, probably. For such a useless Deku, you're really damn useful to keep around. Thanks, Izuku laughed, scratching the back of his head. Not many could understand Kacchan like he could. He reached into the desk drawer, wiping his hand onto his work pants, adding yet another stain to them. Since you won't be going through UA pretty soon, it'll be harder for me to work on your stuff, but here, he handed him a card, his and May's card, for Synergistics, just one of many he had to give out before graduation. You're starting your own agency with Ijiro, right? Take the card in case you need us for anything. He snatched the card with his usual ferocity. Don't be surprised if you only see me when I'm on the news as the new #1 hero. We'd be happy to help with that, you know. So many heroes seeking to fill the gap that All Might left, and out of all of them Kacchan was the one he was rooting for the most. Shocking, but he did have a good heart. Especially if you would be willing to let us sponsor you. Okay, so maybe May was rubbing off on him a bit much. And why would I do that? There's no way I'm letting you take credit for my heroics. It didn't stop him from putting the card into his pocket and spinning on his foot. I gotta go, nerd. Finals are soon. Keep in mind that May's been really into motorcycles lately. Izuku leaned onto his workbench, smiling at Kacchan. His friend froze mid-step, hand on the door handle out of the development area. I'm sure we could probably make one that's powered by your quirk. Shouldn't be too hard to turn explosive power into thrust. You do that plenty of times in a fight. The explosion murder king stood still for a moment, before he slammed the door open. Shut up, you damn nerd. I don't need no cool as hell bike. That probably meant that he'd be asking where his bike was in a few months. Shouldn't be too hard, he already had the chemical formula of his quirk in a notebook. Somewhere. Perhaps some modified version of the blast canister would be able to contain the explosive power and redirect it into some kind of a special engine? They'd have to find a harvesting mechanism. Oh, using the gauntlets would do. A bit of the stored flow could be redirected into the machine while still allowing for maximum mobility. Should probably make sure it's sturdy enough to be used as a battering ram. He turned towards the drawing board, one of the few things that he and May had yet to pack up, mostly because if they weren't working on something they probably wouldn't be going to classes. The last few days of the school year was kind of lazy for them, especially since they had already finished their final projects. And then there was that whole already accepted into college, operators of a successful business, and as of recently owners of their own workshop within biking distance from the college, thing they had going for them. But still, he wanted that nice degree to hang on his wall right next to his official support license. A crash, followed a couple of screams, then screeching of rubber on cement, and then a thud echoed from outside. "What the hell, you crazy bitch? That would be Kachin." "Oh, hi Kachin," May said loudly. "Don't call me that." May entered the door wearing a wide smile that shined despite the dirt that covered her cheeks, and the various shrubbery that stuck out of her hair. Her goggles were around her neck, and the pants she was wearing were completely covered in soot and ripped down one leg. No blood, so that was good. Geez, can you believe some people? No social skills at all. She was one to talk. "Izuku." Her face lit up and she bounded over to him. "How's it going? Are you ready to give our new baby a test run? The specs you drew up were right on the money, by the way. Now that the fuel line is being distributed evenly throughout the engine, there's no more one-sided power issues. Or explosions. The not exploding part was the important part. What happened on your test run? Did you crash or something?" "Oh, it's nothing, just a rough landing." She held up the steering bar with a few wires still hanging out of it. "Can you pass me the screwdriver? I want to make sure this baby is ready as soon as possible. I have another idea I want to get started on before we move to our workshop." She had stars in her eyes as she said that. "Our own workshop. And we get to live there. This is going to be great." She forgot the part where they only bought one bed. It was important. While they were fairly discreet in their own dorms, that was mostly because half the teachers had given up trying to control May. It'd be a load off his chest though. "I've finished up the last of the hero requests, so let me help you. Did the drive shaft come loose or just the bar?" He grabbed at his toolbox, which was half organized, half unorganized, but everything was in there. Or at least it should be. It was part of a matching set his mother got them last year for Christmas. May's was currently everywhere. May's bike, if it could even be called that at this point, originally had 2 wheels and rode on the ground, like a normal bike would have. Now it was a 4-wheeled monstrosity that had enough lift to keep its frame about 452 pounds in the air while sounding no louder than a powerful car. It probably wasn't street legal. At least not until they had their licenses. The bike was also hanging from one of its spokes from a tree like an oversized Christmas ornament. He really shouldn't even be surprised anymore. "Alright, try to start up the rear thrusters so that we can bring it down without breaking our backs." The tree branch snapped and the bike fell to the ground, more or less in one piece. "Or that could happen. Come on, Izuku." May grabbed his hand, pulling him towards their machine. "Let's get to work. We need to get this baby ready before we go to the hot springs." Right. Her graduation present. Also probably sex. May's arms flexed as she pulled a twig free from the gears. Her boobs bounced at the force, just another reminder of how beautiful she was. Albeit, a bit on the crazy side as well. But that was just part of her appeal. Watching her work was something else. He could barely wait. "XXXX. You know, I think we're going to be late." Izuku's voice echoed from underneath their newest project. It was one last creation for UA before they went out into the world and dominated it under the name of their own company Synergistics. Also money. So they could make more babies. May laughed, rolling up the sleeve of her kimono once again, turning a nut that shot off like the lid of a pressurized cooker. "That probably wasn't good. Well, I think we should go soon." The sound of a tool dropping rung throughout the workshop, and Izuku slid out from underneath their project, oil and other grims sticking onto his graduation outfit. "You want to stop working? Who are you and what have you done with May?" She shrugged, hopping off the system and walking out towards the door. "Oh, I just think it's going to explode is all. Why didn't you say so sooner?" That got Izuku moving. In a few heartbeats he was behind her, scooping her up in his arms and sprinting out the door. Oh, hey, a bonus. Getting carried by Izuku was almost as good as riding her bike. And a lot less likely to explode or crash. He came to a stop on the grass field across from the workshop and set her down gently. Several items of her fancy-pantsy kimono were out of place. How? She didn't know where exactly, but it felt different than it did when she was forced into a few hours ago. Why couldn't she just wear pants? Or a skirt. Or one of those other dresses that were easy to put on and take off, like those Chinese dresses. Not this cloth origami puzzle. Oh hey, it hadn't exploded yet. Are you sure it's going to explode? Izuku asked, still holding her by the waist. She could feel his heartbeat and his sharp breaths. She shrugged, reaching down to pick up a spare nut that had been long forgotten. Maybe it was from the hover saws when Izuku first crashed? That was their first real invention, but it could have been from any number of things over the years. Well, normally stuff explodes when I don't think it's going to explode, so maybe it won't. A rumble came from the room, followed by a gust of white steam that rushed out from every gap it could. I stand corrected, it still exploded. How does this always happen? Izuku pulled her in close, burying his neck into her shoulder and taking a long sigh of relief. It wasn't even on, or had fuel. That's it, you're cursed? Me? What makes you think this is my fault? She laughed, touching his cheek. You're the one that probably has some quirk that will make our babies explode. Oh, we should test that. If it's true, we'll have to find some way to make it stop. Oh, I know, gloves. It probably was her fault in the first place, but he didn't need to know that. Oh well, at least the lab got a good steam cleaning. He pulled away, grabbing onto her hand as he did. Have I ever told you how beautiful you are? Yes. She smiled at him. It was such an odd thing being beautiful. It was never important before she met Izuku. Even now it was mostly off her radar. You always do that in the morning and right after we have sex. He sighed, palm covering his reddening face. May, volume, remember? She did not. Anyways, his hand tightened around hers and they began to walk towards the ceremony. Let's go get graduated, and then start our new life together. Sure, but we still need to go to the hot springs. She pulled on his arm so that he leaned towards her, where she kissed him on the cheek. Close enough to his ear to whisper. And have hot spring sex? She was clean. The hot spring was warm, relaxing, and very private. A bit too private. In that she was the only one in it. It was bad enough that she had to pre-wash herself, but now Izuku was taking forever. Steam wafted up into the air, barely obscuring the rocks and plants that decorated the area. Her horizon was a set of bamboo walls that drew her eyes upwards to stars above. Either she didn't pay attention when she normally looked up at the night sky, or there were more stars out tonight. There was a lot less boyfriend tonight. What was taking him so long? She was a lot more dirty than he was. Well, maybe. He probably had cuter grease stains though. Especially when he took off his goggles and he had a bit of dirt that failed to hide his freckles. She drummed her fingers along the flat rock she had been sitting on, and looked back at the boys' entrance to their hot spring. As to why a mixed bath had separate washrooms was beyond her. She was a gadget maker, not a hot spring maker. She wanted Izuku to wash her. It felt good and let her be lazy. Plus her boobs were always so clean afterwards. Sinking down so that her mouth touched the water, she blew bubbles, glaring at fake lily pad that doubled as a drink holder. She should get Izuku drunk. The idea of her getting drunk and losing control of her body wasn't too appealing. Besides, she was weird enough. Izuku, on the other hand, needed to loosen up. Her pink hair floated along the surface of the water. This was torture. Right now she was something that she hated being. But worse was that she was bored and horny. She liked being horny. It was fun to seduce Izuku like that. But this was just horrible. The curtain to the boys' washing area still hadn't opened. He was still in there. Chances are he was fretting over something that wasn't relevant to them being naked and having sex in the hot springs. She'd fix this. Izuku was easy, she just needed to kick his butt sometimes. Steam followed her as she marched towards the curtains, already missing the warmth of the hot springs. But it'll be better once she was back in there touching Izuku. And Izuku touching her. He had good touches. Wonderful touches. It was just the best. May. Izuku screeched, a towel wrapped around his waist as he stopped mid-stride, hands in his muttering position. What are you doing here? Getting you. She grabbed his wrist and tossed his towel to the side. He was always cute when he was blushing. But his shyness was really annoying. This wasn't his first time seeing her naked, it wasn't even their first time having sex. But he was just so shy and awkward. She brought his hand up to her breast. I got bored waiting. I'm sorry. He squeaked. Don't be sorry. She pulled him close, feeling all of his muscles. And his hard dick. It was like his muscles but better. A tender kiss and a few well-placed touches and rubs were enough to get Izuku excited. She twitched when he squeezed her with his large calloused hands. Electricity sparked along her every limb like hot water rushing through frozen pipes. Just pick me up and have sex with me. He didn't hesitate, dropping his hands to cup her ass as he picked her up. She wrapped her legs around his waist and arms around his neck, kissing along his collarbone. She was the marionettist of his body. Every action caused a subtle reaction from him. A twitch here, a moan there, a tensing there. This was all to get him going. For him to break out of that shy, awkward shell he was in whenever she wanted to do something naughty. It got easier the more she did it. He took a few steps, then stopped. Wait. She pulled back, glaring at him. I don't want to slip, it's kind of wet. With a huff she got down. He had it point. Even if it wasn't a sexy point. Getting hurt would probably turn him off. Especially if she got hurt. Fine. She grabbed his hand once again, entwining their fingers. Calluses met calluses and the numerous scars along their hands created a mosaic of their work and love. Each one was a mark that connected them to one of their babies and to each other, perfectly woven and inseparable. Just like their lives and their future. Then come on and let's get into the water. She brought him to the shallows. Dropping lower and lower with each step until her body was submerged while laying down. Izuku stood, looming over her like a sexy tower of muscle. His penis sticking out from him was just how she liked it. Large and hard for her. Don't be so nervous, Izuku. She reached up just enough to wrap her arms around his neck and pulled him down onto his knees, one of which was between her legs. His arms slammed into the water on either side of her, splashing the water. The stars and freckles seemed to bleed into one beautiful mask for him. I'm not nervous. His voice was like the rumbling of the earth, shaking her to her very core and stoked the fires that were ready to billow out of her. Magical, that was how he made her feel. Like everything in life was some new and exciting discovery, just waiting for them to make it. I was just amazed by how beautiful you are. As long as she had him, then there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. Well, except normal stuff. I love you. He kissed her, one hand grabbing onto her back, fingers on her spine like he was wiring a machine, turning her on, and on, and on, and on again. All cylinders were firing now. It didn't take much to get her going, a few kisses, a couple of touches, and just the promises of what was to come. With Izuku at the helm of her desires, she'd always feel something exciting. Your boobs are so big, he muttered, grabbing onto one of her breasts, kneading it and rubbing her nipple. But your waist is so small. She moaned, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. Sex was great, better than food and chocolate. Why didn't Izuku have more hands? And fingers? And just more of Izuku. Yep, she was ready. Izuku, she pulled him closer to her, keeping his face a breath away from hers. I want you inside me. But the internet said we should use waterproof lube for. Already taken care of, she kissed him. It was the best way to make him stop talking and start acting. It probably shortened out his brain or something. Same for her. Most of the time. All we need to think about right now is each other and making sure we both feel good. So please. Fuck me crazy. He eased into her, making the water ripple at his every movement. She felt every inch of him delving deeper inside of her, until he stopped halfway to her limit. A quick shift, and he was touching everywhere, grinding against her sensitive areas. Then he thrust in. All the way in. She slipped, falling into the water as she screamed his name. In a heartbeat she scrambled up, finding his face and kissing at random. Keep going, she wrapped her arms around him, holding on tight and forcing him to support her weight. He should be used to that by now anyways. I love you, he muttered, kissing, all while keeping up his assault on her low half. There was no resistance. He could pillage and take whatever he wanted from her. And she wanted to give him everything. She pressed her swollen chest against his in a desperate attempt to touch him more. Every nerve was demanding more of that delicious Izuku energy. More, she needed more. She found his mouth and began to kiss him anew with a raw primal hunger. Her hands roamed over his strong muscular arms in new sensations before they snaked their way around to his broad flat back. More, Izuku more. His hips bucked with the same eager passion he had for all things, frantically pounding at her to deliver her to the pleasure that was so close. She wrapped her legs around him, feeling him, experiencing him. The water sloshed around them, creating waves, and lapping up into the splashing them with heat and steam. Izuku stood, taking her out of the water and sending a shock of cold around her. He kissed her again and again, standing as he bounced her up and down with those powerful muscles of his. He grunted hard into her mouth. He was close. But she was closer. A glorious finish was coming. Izuku, she pulled away from just a moment, looking over the area as her mind slowly pieced together what she wanted. More sex, that was obvious. But what kind of, oh, there was a rock. Rock sit? He groaned, shuffling over towards the rock. The movements of his hips stopped allowing her to bask for a moment with him all the way inside of her. It probably didn't help that she kept kissing his neck and touching all of his muscles, but she didn't want to stop. The rock was warm but still cool to the touch. It made her gasp, and gave her a better idea. No, you sit, I'll ride. Izuku planted himself onto the rock, and she found her feet in the water. You're so beautiful, May. And you're a stud muffin, she purred, placing a hand on his shoulder, using him as leverage to angle herself down onto him. His dick twitched inside of her, pulsating and sending her nerves into a frenzy. Izuku did not idle. His hands strummed every chord along her back to create a symphony of pleasure for her. The softness of his lips found her breast as he began to lick and suck them greedily. He always did like her breasts the most. Just like she loved his muscles. A good trade. With her arms around his neck and their movements causing her to drive her off every single deep end, May began to moan, loudly, before as it slowly built up and up into a scream of ecstasy. She could feel it building, and then it happened. Her first orgasm of the night felt absolutely wonderful. May. His voice was a rugged whisper that melted her down into a version of pure lust and sexual frustration. One wasn't enough. She needed more. Much more. I'm getting close, we aren't? Don't worry about it. She continued to grind and hump him. She found his hands, entwining their fingers. Round 2 was close. It's safe, it's safe, it's safe. She repeated. The not sex crazed her had made sure that they wouldn't have to worry about anything. His whole body began to tense like a wave was spreading through his body all the way to his penis, and into her. May. Izuku. She kissed him as he came inside of her, the sensation bringing her to a finish. All the lust in her body left her, and she fell into the hot spring with a splash. Everything tingled and she was completely drained. SH really needed to get it into Izuku's head that the best way to make her go to bed was sex. That was great. I love you. I know. He slid into the water, pulling her in close. One head finding her breast. Okay, so maybe round 2 later. I love you too, May. XXXX. Okay, so the hot spring was a success. And May had made some kind of waterproof lube that doubled as a spermicide without telling him. That didn't really matter, but they should probably sell that patent to someone else for public image stuff. And he really shouldn't be thinking about that right now. Izuku crossed his legs, staring at the futon him and May were going to be sharing tonight, wearing nothing but a bathrobe that was probably going to be forcibly removed from his body within the next 5 minutes. Which meant he had about that much time to figure out how to propose to May. Sure, she was going to say yes, and he had her father's approval, and his mom already called her daughter. But it wasn't officially official yet. Was it too much to do it tonight? It just kind of felt cheesy to have a lot of sex and then ask her. But as far as romantics were concerned, May would probably be okay with it. But it had to be special, right? Hey, Izuku? May was wearing her gray bathrobe in the sexiest way possible, showing off the fact that she wasn't wearing a bra by leaving a trail of bare skin from her cleavage all the way to her navel. He could almost see her nipples. Her pink hair was flat from the steam, falling to her shoulders in a luscious wave. What's this? Then he saw what she was holding. A small black box. The ring box. The one that had the wedding ring in it. Why'd he bring it? Alright. Romantic setting. Worse was that it was open and she was looking at the ring. but no smile was on her face. Was it not enough? Was it too much? He should have gotten the bigger diamond. May. That's nothing. I swear. It wasn't. I mean, he flailed his arms trying to find some kind of defense. Oh, what was the point? It's a proposal ring. Oh, like a wedding ring? She asked, looking at him, scratching her head just enough to cause her breast to slip from the slightest bit. Yeah, he flinched, closing his eyes. Why was he flinching? This was May. The girl that already had their whole life planned out way one or another. He shouldn't be flinching. Oh, okay. May took the ring out of the box and tossed it behind her and slipped on the ring before falling down onto him. Now round 2. Wait. His penis did not wait. Did you just agree to marry me? No, he was confused. I did that after you became my boyfriend and we went to see your mom. Remember? Why'd you wait so long to give me a ring? Do I need to get you one? Do you want a ring? A laugh escaped him and he pulled May into a hug, his arms wrapping around her narrow waist. He felt like an idiot for worrying. May didn't know what the word romantic meant. Despite how weird you are, I love you. That's good, but I'm still horny.